Chapter 3663. A pair of cold, bloodshot eyes like copper bells were currently staring at Lin Yi. Its throat trembled slightly, and it let out a scalp-numbing roar. Its fangs were exposed, and a fishy smell assailed the nostrils. Looking at its appearance, it should be a mountain leopard, but its body was several times larger than an ordinary mountain leopard. Its height alone was close to 3 meters. At this moment, it had just stuck its ferocious head in, and it had already filled up the entrance of the cave. There was only one hole in the entire tree hole. This way Lin Yi had no way to escape. He was completely caught by this giant mountain leopard. Of course, Lin Yi didn't dare to turn around and use martial arts to break other places. He was also afraid that this monster would sneak attack him. It could be seen that his previous speculation was not wrong at all. This entire tree hole was a living trap. If he was not careful, he had already become prey that was about to enter the other's mouth. After clearly sensing the other's aura, Lin Yi's heart suddenly trembled. Sure enough, this mountain leopard was indeed a powerful spirit beast with the strength of a Foundation establishment stage. In fact, if it wasn't for this level of fierce beast, it wouldn't have been able to block those people from before. After all, those people were able to come to the back mountain. Their strength should at least be at the Foundation establishment stage. Of course, although the possibility of it being a peak heaven stage expert wasn't high, it couldn't be completely ruled out. However, what made Lin Yi slightly happy was that although this giant mountain leopard was a Foundation establishment stage spirit beast, its strength should be at the early stage of Foundation establishment stage. He wasn't completely powerless against it. However, even if everyone was at the early stage of Foundation establishment stage, if they were to really fight, there was still a huge gap between humans and this fierce beast that was born to fight. Especially since this was the opponent's home ground. At this moment, facing such a fierce beast, even a guy like Lin Yi who killed his way up from the secular world didn't have much confidence in his heart that he could escape unscathed. Taking advantage of the time when the giant mountain leopard was still sizing him up, Lin Yi quietly put the thunder pig behind him into the space of the jade pendant. After all, this guy was not born to fight and its strength was too weak. In this kind of situation, if it was casually scratched, it would become cannon fodder. Lin Yi was still counting on it to find the heart-devouring exquisite grass for him. But he couldn't bear the consequences. Fortunately, this giant mountain leopard seemed to only pay attention to Lin Yi. It didn't even bat an eyelid at a small creature like Skybolt Pig. Lin Yi couldn't help but sigh in his heart. This guy in front of him was probably addicted to eating humans. The low growls of the giant mountain leopard became more and more intense. Starting from its huge and sinister head, its entire body slowly stretched out. At the same time, incomparably sharp black claws appeared on the soles of his feet. With a light slash, several deep claw marks were left on the soles of his feet. This scene was truly shocking to the eye. One had to know that the wood beneath his feet was no ordinary wood. Lin Yi had felt it when he came in. The wood was extremely sturdy, comparable to hard rock, and the claws could leave such a deep mark. If he wasn't careful and got scratched by the claws, he'd probably die. Wouldn't he be dismembered on the spot? This was the advantage of combat-type spirit beasts. They were born to fight. As a race born to fight, their entire body was a lethal weapon. Compared to them, humans were simply weak and vulnerable. This was also the reason why it was difficult for human experts to contend with combat-type spirit beasts at the same level of strength. Lin Yi looked around. Under the threat of this giant mountain leopard, he couldn't help but think of retreating. Although the hole was blocked by the other party, it wasn't difficult for an expert in the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm like him to break a hole in the tree hole and escape. However, this seemingly safer and wiser idea was immediately extinguished by Lin Yi's own rationality. This was different from the giant python he encountered at the beginning. Although that giant python's strength was not inferior to this giant mountain leopard, its target was the black ape. It didn't have any thoughts about Lin Yi, so Lin Yi could calmly escape. In reality, if the giant python wanted to attack him, Lin Yi was still confident that he could escape. After all, he had the gale-chasing lightning boots and the butterfly subtle steps. He was confident that he would not lose to the giant python in terms of speed. However, the giant mountain leopard in front of him was different. Even if he thought with his toes, he knew that this fellow was definitely much faster than the giant python. Especially in such a dense jungle, it would not be an exaggeration to say that it was the king of speed. Therefore, even with the speed bonus of the gale-chasing lightning boots and the butterfly subtle steps, Lin Yi still dared not compete with the other party in speed. After all, firstly, Yangming might not be faster than the giant mountain leopard. Secondly, it was raining cats and dogs outside, hence his visibility and perception were suppressed to an extremely low level. If he was not careful, he might barge into another powerful spirit beast's territory. If another troublesome ferocious creature appeared, he would be in danger. Compared to running away, turning around and fighting at this moment might seem stupid, but it was a more reliable choice. Yes, this was the opponent's home ground. Yes, this was a trap set by the opponent and it was unavoidable. However, for Lin Yi, it was not that he had no advantage at all. The biggest advantage he could rely on at the moment was this tree hole. For humans, this tree hole was big and spacious enough, but for a ferocious beast that was nearly 3 meters tall and more than 2 meters long, it seemed too narrow. Most of the time, a strong and huge beast's body could be a great advantage, but in some situations it was also a disadvantage. Perhaps this giant mountain leopard was fast and even agile outside, but in this tree hole, Lin Yi bet that it was definitely not as agile as he thought. In a battle between masters, often a subtle flaw could determine the outcome. At this moment, although this little advantage might not be able to directly kill the giant mountain leopard, there was no doubt that it gave Lin Yi a lot of space to play. He hadn't encountered this feeling of dying at any time for a long time. He could see the infinite danger from the pair of cold and bloody eyes, but Lin Yi was ready to take a gamble. Roar dash. The giant mountain leopard suddenly pounced forward, and the killing game began. In such a narrow tree hole, especially on such a rainy day, the giant mountain leopard moved a little, and the extremely strong stench from its body had already hit the nose, choking people to breathe. This fella, even the smell on its body could kill people. Chapter 3664. So fast. Even though Lin Yi had already overestimated his opponent's speed, he realized at this moment that he had still underestimated his opponent. However, this also proved that his choice to face it head-on was correct. Based on his opponent's speed, if he wanted to run, he really had no chance of winning. Lin Yi hurriedly leaned to the side and used all his strength to barely avoid it. However, the clothes on his chest were still torn by the strong wind brought by the claws. Roar. The fact that Lin Yi was able to avoid this sudden sure-kill attack was obviously out of the giant mountain leopard's expectation. According to its past experience, this attack should have been in the bag against an expert in the early stage of the foundational level. The pile of bones in the corner was proof. However, the giant mountain leopard's movements did not stop at all. When one claw missed, another claw immediately followed. Compared to the previous claw, it was faster and more powerful. In a hurry, Lin Yi could not find a chance to counterattack. He was forced to retreat again. After all, even if he was confident in his strength, he would not rashly fight against such a powerful and ferocious beast. He clearly knew that his opponent was dangerous. If he attacked without understanding the situation, it would not be called courage, it would be called stupidity. However, this claw was not as easy as the first one. As Lin Yi retreated, it was also chasing. Even if Lin Yi used the butterfly microsteps to maximize his speed and even change directions, it still chased after him. This was no longer a simple beast's instinctive attack. It was a real high-level martial art. This kind of martial art was so profound that human experts could not master it, no matter how fast you were or how agile you were. Once you were locked on by it, there was no way to get rid of it. Before this, Lin Yi still wanted to rely on his agility to bully this huge beast, but when the opponent used its second claw, everything became a bubble. No matter what, he could not get rid of it. What was the use of agility? Lin Yi could not help but sigh in his heart. As expected, there was not a single battle-type spirit beast in the early stage of the foundational level that was easy to deal with. In the end, this claw ended with Lin Yi's left arm being wounded. 3 bone-deep wounds were shocking. Blood continued to flow. This was the result of Lin Yi using the cave wall behind him as cover. If the giant panther had not slowed down a little due to some misgivings, this claw would not have just left 3 wounds. Perhaps even Lin Yi's entire left arm would have been torn off. However, the scene just now also gave Lin Yi some inspiration. Although this vicious creature's movements were full of killing power, it was very careful to control its own strength. It was unwilling to release even the slightest bit of wind, as if it was afraid of destroying the tree hole. It was especially obvious when it almost scratched the wall. In reality, no matter how hard the walls of the tree hole were, the man and the beast were both in the early stage of the foundation establishment realm. If the two of them were to really fight, not to mention this small tree hole, even the entire tree would be blasted into pieces. The reason why these experts died here before was because they couldn't even withstand the first claw and were instantly killed. After discovering this, Lin Yi could not help but snicker in his heart. Could it be that this fellow still wanted to rely on this tree hole trap to continue tricking people? He's thinking quite a lot. After all, a powerful spirit beast in the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm was not an ordinary beast. Its intelligence did not lose to humans in the slightest. Its actions were also far from being as straightforward as ordinary beasts. Every action had its own special purpose. In fact, legend has it that some spirit beasts could take human form after stepping into the Heaven's Path. However, the scope of the Heaven's Path was too wide. Who knew if the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm could do it? However, thinking too much during the process of battle might not be a good thing. However, just as Linny was thinking about how to use this point to make a big fuss, although the giant panther's 2 claws missed, normally speaking, it should have revealed a flaw in its moves. However, it did not. Not only did it not exhaust its strength, but its attacks became even more ferocious. With 2 claws in the air, the giant panther immediately turned around. Linny was slightly surprised. Immediately after, he saw the slender and powerful tail on its buttocks sweeping towards him with a whistling sound. And this was not an ordinary tail sweep. The speed of the panther's tail was so fast that it was hard to see with the naked eye. 1 turned into 3, 3 turned into 9, turning into layers of tail shadows that pounced towards him. This fellow was really fierce. According to Lin Yi's estimation, the power of this phantom tail was already comparable to his Frenzy 8 trigrams Palm's 21st style. If he was swept by it again, even if it was just a slight graze like before, it would be hard for him to not die. The giant panther was full of confidence. This was its trump card. An early stage of the Foundation establishment realm had no chance of surviving this move. Even a slightly stronger early stage of the Foundation establishment realm expert would be seriously injured if not killed by this trump card. Little did it know that the more powerful the trump card, the more unexpected fatal flaws would appear at certain times. Although this giant panther already had intelligence no less than a human's, its thinking was still the same as a normal person's. It had a fatal blind spot. Facing the layers of tail shadows, Linny did not choose to dodge like before. Instead, he directly soared into the air. The giant panther's eyes suddenly revealed a look of contempt. To choose to soar into the air in front of its trump card, this fella simply did not want to die fast enough. However, in the next moment, it suddenly felt that something was wrong. Although Linny jumped into the air, his whole body was stuck to the cave wall behind him. If its tail swept over, although it could kill Linny, it would inevitably destroy the tree cave at the same time. Thus, the giant panther subconsciously hesitated, and this gave Linny a chance to counterattack. Butterfly microsteps stepped on the cave wall behind him, and the speed of his movement technique was instantly pushed to the extreme. In the blink of an eye, Linny had already leaped over the layers of tail shadows and directly closed in on top of the panther's head. Then, the 21st style of the Frenzy 8 trigrams Palm, and with the attack bonus of the Essence Necklace, the firepower was unleashed. Boom! The entire giant tree trembled and countless branches and leaves fell from the outside, startling a group of harmless weak birds. Phew! Looking at the giant panther that fell to the ground and could not move, Linny let out a sigh of relief. From the beginning when the panther blocked the cave entrance, he had been in extreme danger, and the dangerous Palm just now was even more of a struggle for life in the midst of death. If it was not for the fact that he noticed the opponent's tiny flaw in the process, even if Linny could eventually kill this giant panther, both sides would definitely be injured, and he would need to recover for a period of time. Chapter 3665. This was his strongest killing move. If this move still couldn't kill this ferocious creature, then he really could only kneel and beg, this ghostly thing. Fortunately, although this giant mountain leopard was fierce, in the end it couldn't withstand the 21st move of the Wildfire 8 trigrams Palm. Linny finally had the last laugh. At this moment it was still raining cats and dogs outside, and they couldn't leave for a while. Linny hid in the tree hole and entered the space in the jade pendant to recover his true chi and heal his injuries. But before entering the space he glanced at the mountain leopard's corpse on the ground, and with a thought he stored it together with the corpse. After entering the space, the ghostly thing's voice rang out next to him with a hint of surprise. "Nine-tailed cloud leopard? You can even kill this thing? You're not bad, kid." "Senior Ghost, this fellow is called the nine-tailed cloud leopard?" Linny was slightly taken aback, but when he thought back to the killing move he had just used, the name was quite appropriate. That's right. From the looks of it, it should be an adult, and its strength is at least at the early Foundation establishment stage. It's a famous killer in the jungle, and even in the world of spirit beasts, it's an extremely sinister and cunning fellow. It's rare for someone with your strength to be able to kill it in the jungle. The ghostly thing's voice carried a rare trace of admiration. Senior ghost, you flatter me. I was just lucky. Lin Yi smiled bitterly and shook his head. Although he had ultimately relied on his strength to be able to kill the nine-tailed cloud leopard, luck at the last moment was also crucial. If the nine-tailed cloud leopard hadn't subconsciously hesitated for a moment, it would have been hard to say who would have won. Of course, this bit of luck was also obtained through intelligence. If Lin Yi hadn't noticed its flaw, which couldn't even be considered a flaw, he wouldn't have had the chance to gamble on this bit of luck. No need to be humble. Luck is also a part of strength, the ghostly thing said lightly. Lin Yi looked at it with some surprise. From its tone, there seemed to be a story behind it. To be honest, the ghostly thing had been in the space in the jade pendant for so long, but he still didn't know where it came from. He just had a faint feeling that it had something to do with Heaven Island. However, although this doubt had existed in his heart for a long time, Lin Yi was too embarrassed to ask since the ghost itself didn't want to say it. He could only continue to suppress it. Looking at the bag of blood-red gravel that had just been collected, Lin Yi asked the ghostly thing while healing his injuries and restoring his true chi, "Senior Ghost, do you know what these things are?" The ghostly thing sized him up for a while. "I've never seen it before. It looks like some kind of material, but I don't know what it's used for." "You don't even know what a ghost is?" Lin Yi could not help but be stunned. According to the ghost's previous display of knowledge, there should be nothing that it did not know, but this pile of blood-red gravel was something that even he could not explain. Could it be an extremely rare material? He could only keep this question to himself for now and see if he could find a way to find out its specific name and use in the future. After a short while, Lin Yi finished recuperating. He then brought the skybolt pig out of the jade space. After all, his priority was to find the heart-devouring exquisite grass. He didn't have much time to waste. When he came out of the jade space, it was already sunny after the rain. It was a good time to move, so Lin Yi immediately brought the skybolt pig down to the ground. The rest was naturally left to the skybolt pig. Because he had never seen the heart-devouring exquisite grass before, even a natural-born treasure hunter like the skybolt pig could not directly find the heart-devouring exquisite grass. He could only follow Lin Yi's request to find a suitable place for the heart-devouring exquisite grass to grow. There were two conditions: sufficient light and dry. It was a very simple condition, but it was not easy to find such a piece of land in the outer area of the mountain that was like a tropical rainforest. However, to the skybolt pig, this request was completely a piece of cake. Rather than saying that his talent was treasure hunting, it was more accurate to say that he was completely aware of the surrounding environment. His nose was far more accurate than the most sophisticated detector in the mortal world. As long as he was willing, he could grasp the slightest subtle change in the surrounding environment without missing a single point. And this range could even reach a radius of a few miles. With this kind of equipment, it was naturally easy for the skybolt pig to find a place that met Lin Yi's requirements. GG. The skybolt pig happily squealed twice when he saw the light of day again. "Oh right, Senior Ghost, when I was in the mortal world, I heard that when spiritual beasts reach heaven rank, they would be able to speak the human language. But my skybolt pig seems to still be squeaking?" Since there was no danger, Lin Yi asked curiously. "Some spiritual beasts are like this, but some spiritual beasts are not. Don't use your knowledge of spiritual beasts in the mortal world as an authority." The ghost said faintly, "In the mortal world, the spiritual beasts you see are all low-level spiritual beasts. They have gone through a long period of evolution, so when they reach heaven rank they can basically speak. However, your little fella's strength was forcefully increased by you. It is not the time for it to speak, so naturally it cannot speak. This is like a child speaking, there is a gradual process. It is not something that can be achieved just by increasing your strength. In addition, on this heaven rank island, some spiritual beasts are born with the strength of heaven rank." "How can it speak?" "I see." Lin Yi was enlightened. The ghost should be an authority in this area, so Lin Yi was very convinced. In the process of bringing Lin Yi to potential destinations, the skybolt pig did not forget its old profession. One man and one pig, they looted all kinds of spiritual herbs along the way. As a result, the points displayed on Lin Yi's basket directly jumped to a high of 738. According to the common sense of previous trials, the final points of similar trials for newcomers were generally around 500 points. But now, less than a day had passed, and Lin Yi had already exceeded the requirements of the mission. Under the guidance of the skybolt pig, Lin Yi trekked in the dense forest for an entire day. It was only when the sun was about to set that they finally reached the destination that met his requirements, a large canyon. This canyon was more than 10 feet wide, and it was marked on the map provided by the back mountain hall. Originally, a canyon was very difficult to associate with the words dry, but in the outer area of the back mountain, it was already a rare place that met these two conditions. Chapter 3666. In a place like this, due to the lack of tree canopies, there was plenty of light. However, if one were to consider the fact that it was dry, then the only light source would be the cliffs on both sides. Lin Yi looked around with rapt attention. However, all he saw was that the cliffs on both sides were barren and there was no sign of the heart-devouring exquisite grass. Not only that, even the most common plants were rare. In the secular world, in a place like this where even birds wouldn't poop, it was already a miracle for anything to grow. Can the heart-devouring exquisite grass grow in a place like this? Lin Yi's heart suddenly sank. To be able to find such a place that barely met the requirements was already not easy. If he couldn't find it here, even if he had the help of the skybolt pig, he wouldn't have to worry about not being able to find the next potential destination, but it would be hard to say how long it would take. Now that the first day was almost over and the sky was completely dark, no matter how skilled and courageous Lin Yi was, he wouldn't dare to act rashly in a place like this where he could easily bump into a Foundation establishment stage spirit beast. If he were to include the time needed to return, there wouldn't be much time left for him to find the heart-devouring exquisite grass. Now, the problem left for Lin Yi was whether he should continue to search on the cliffs of the Grand Canyon where it was difficult to grow any spirit herbs, or save time to quickly change locations and head to the next place that met the requirements. Just as Lin Yi was weighing his options, he suddenly heard the excited cries of the skybolt pig. Could it be that there was a discovery? Lin Yi was overjoyed and quickly ran over. Gigi. Gigi. Seeing that Lin Yi was coming over, the skybolt pig used its front paw to point at the cliff below Lin Yi's feet. Lin Yi looked in the direction it was pointing at and discovered that about 150 feet away from his feet, there was a tree trunk that grew out of a crack in the cliff. Even though it couldn't be compared to the towering trees on the ground, it was still a rare sight in this barren cliff. However, in the end it was just a tree. And not the heart-devouring exquisite grass that he needed? Just as Lin Yi was feeling a little disappointed, the skybolt pig was still chirping non-stop. It even couldn't wait to write on the ground, look carefully at the bottom right of the tree. Lin Yi was stunned. He had told Skybolt Pig about the characteristics of the heart-devouring exquisite grass so that it would be easier for him to find his target. Could it be that there really was a heart-devouring exquisite grass? Following Skybolt Pig's instructions, Lin Yi carefully observed for a while, and after a while his eyes suddenly lit up. On the lower right side of the tree, in the gap that was blocked by the leaves and branches, a trace of a spiritual herb could be seen. Moreover, it was undoubtedly the heart-devouring exquisite grass. Sure enough, the heavens did not disappoint those who persevere. Lin Yi heaved a sigh of relief. As long as he could find the heart-devouring exquisite grass, then his mission this time would be considered a success, and he wouldn't have come here in vain. However, even though he had found the heart-devouring exquisite grass, how to harvest it was another problem. Although Lin Yi was now an early-stage foundation building expert, the key problem was that he couldn't fly. The heart-devouring exquisite grass was 150 feet below him, and the cliff was abnormally smooth. Looking down, he couldn't even find a foothold. Climbing down like this was simply wishful thinking. Even if he had the guts to jump down directly, the tree below might not be so sturdy. Standing on top of it probably wouldn't be a problem. But if he had a strong impact, the result would be unimaginable, and he would definitely make a decision immediately. It was a pity that he didn't bring a rope. Lin Yi sighed regretfully. If he had prepared a rope in the space in the jade pendant, he only needed to use the rope as a foothold, and with his strength he could go up and down 10 times without a problem. Looks like I can only use the materials here to weave my own rope. Lin Yi looked around. There were many vines hanging on the giant tree not far behind him, and they looked quite sturdy. Using these things to weave a rope should not be a problem. Since the sky wasn't dark yet, Lin Yi started working immediately. Skybolt Pig ran around to help as well, and after half an incense stick's time, a 20 feet long vine rope was formed. Lin Yi tested it a little and it was quite sturdy. He tied one end of the vine rope to the nearest giant tree, and Lin Yi immediately grabbed the vine rope with one hand. He stepped on the cliff with both feet and swung down lightly. In the blink of an eye, the heart-devouring exquisite grass was already in front of him. After wrapping the vine rope around his waist twice, Lin Yi immediately landed on the protruding branch and looked down. The situation below made him even more overjoyed. The characteristics were all consistent, and there was no doubt that this was the real heart-devouring exquisite grass. However, what made Lin Yi regretful was that there was only one heart-devouring exquisite grass here. The heart-devouring exquisite grass was a necessary ingredient for refining the foundation-building pill, and it was an extremely rare and precious herb. It could not even be found in the market, and ordinary people would not even have seen it, let alone possess it. Think about it, even in the back mountain where treasures of heaven and earth were everywhere, and even with the help of an expert treasure-hunting spirit beast like the skybolt pig, Lin Yi still spent a lot of effort to find it. This kind of heart-devouring exquisite grass would be worth at least a few tens of spiritual jades. If he met someone who knew the trade and needed it, even if he offered 100 spiritual jades, there would still be people who would buy it. Therefore, to be able to find one heart-devouring exquisite grass was already a great thing. Lin Yi was not the kind of person who would not be satisfied. At the current stage he had a foundation-building pill, and together with the foundation-building barrier-breaking pill, he could already meet the requirements for his next cultivation. When the conditions were right, success would come naturally, and everything would be smooth sailing. As for the peak of the early stage of the foundation-building realm, that would require other opportunities. Lin Yi also did not expect to be able to get 8 or 10 ingredients for the foundation-building pill in one trial. That was not realistic at all. Lin Yi, who had long cultivated the mentality that it was not easy to level up in the secular world, was still very easily satisfied. He carefully bent down and stretched out his hand to pluck the heart-devouring exquisite grass. However, just as his fingertips were about to touch it, a soul-stirring long whistle suddenly came from above his head. Then a strong gust of wind blew, causing the extended branch under his feet to shake crazily, and Lin Yi himself was on the verge of falling. Fortunately, he still had 2 coils of vine rope tied around his body. Otherwise, this sudden gust of wind would have caused Lin Yi to lose his footing and fall down. Falling half to death would be considered a light punishment. If he was washed away by the rapid river, it would be difficult to find this place to pluck the heart-devouring exquisite grass again. Chapter 3667. The intensity of the battle this time was even greater than when the cloud-piercing nine-tailed panther had trapped them in the tree hole. Fuck. What's going on? Lin Yi suddenly had an ominous feeling. Then he felt the sky darken and he was shrouded in a huge shadow. Looking up, he saw a giant eagle circling in the air about 5 to 6 feet above the canyon. Its wingspan was more than 5 feet. In the secular world it was 16 meters long. Appearing in the sky above the canyon, it gave Lin Yi the feeling that it could cover the sky and cover the earth. No matter how he thought about it, a ferocious bird of this size was definitely not simple. Its claws were like golden hooks and its beak was like a blood diamond. Under the reflection of the setting sun, it was cold and intimidating. With just a cursory glance, Lin Yi could tell that this giant eagle was at least a Foundation Establishment spirit beast. Moreover, its strength seemed to be at least 2 levels higher than the 9-tailed cloud leopard that he had blasted to death. In other words, this fellow was at least a mid-stage Foundation Establishment spirit beast. Compared to it, the flying spirit beasts in the rear mountain hall were as tame as quails. Moreover, their strength was far less exaggerated. Lin Yi had no doubt that if those flying spirit beasts had met this fellow in the sky, they would have all been killed in minutes. Faced with such a ferocious bird, Lin Yi did not have the slightest bit of confidence to contend against it. The only thing he was glad about was that before he came down, he had put the skybolt pig into the space in the jade pendant in advance, instead of letting the pig keep a lookout for him from above. If the skybolt pig was really up there, forget about keeping a lookout or anything, he would have directly become a snack for this ferocious bird. However, now that the skybolt pig was fine, the one in danger was Lin Yi himself. The eagle's eyes were as sharp as a ghost's, and it had clearly locked onto Lin Yi. After all, a living person like Lin Yi had appeared on the cliff. This target was too obvious. Fuck. How were they supposed to play? Lin Yi's heart skipped a beat as he watched the giant eagle hover in the air for a while before swooping down in his direction. Previously, he still had the confidence to deal with an early-stage Foundation Establishment realm spirit beast like the 9-tailed cloud leopard. However, the one above him was at least a mid-stage Foundation Establishment realm spirit beast. If he were to really fight it, he would probably be killed in a single move. More importantly, he was able to stand firmly on the branch thanks to the 2 coils of vines around his waist. Under such circumstances, not to mention a middle-stage foundation establishment stage giant condor, even if an early-stage foundation establishment stage spirit beast came, Lin Yi might not be able to handle it. However, no matter what Lin Yi thought, the giant eagle above him was prepared to treat him as its dinner today. Although Lin Yi's body was a little small compared to its huge body, the flesh and blood of human cultivators had always been delicious. Moreover, the amount of spiritual energy it contained was far above that of other spirit beasts. It was a great supplement that could only be found by chance. It folded its wings. The giant eagle swooped down towards Lin Yi. In an instant, it had already crossed a distance of tens of feet and appeared above Lin Yi's head. The golden claws under its abdomen clawed at him fiercely. In an instant, it produced a great power that was far above all the divine weapons that Lin Yi had seen before. Bang! In a hurry, Lin Yi had a strong back and did not hesitate to pay the price of injury. He forcefully stuck himself to the cliff. Although this limited his movements, he could at least fight back. It was better than being captured by the eagle without a stable footing. At the same time, Lin Yi clenched his fist and with his back against the cliff, he blasted out the 22 forms of the frenzied fire fist. The fiery fist intent instantly met the giant eagle's golden claws. The 22 forms of the frenzied fire fist was Lin Yi's second most powerful move, apart from the 21 forms of the frenzied fire 8 trigrams palm. Although it was slightly inferior to the 21 forms of the frenzied fire 8 trigrams palm, its advantage was that it would not exhaust the vital energy in his body in one move. On this kind of cliff, where there was neither the sky nor the ground, Lin Yi had to leave some vital energy to protect himself. Otherwise, the opponent would not need to expend so much effort. With the 21 forms of the frenzied fire 8 trigrams palm, not to mention what it could do to the giant eagle, he would directly disarm and surrender or simply fall down. Whether he lived or died was purely up to the will of the heavens. The fist intent of the 22 forms of the frenzied fire fist was like a volcano that had been silent for many years suddenly erupting. Not only was it powerful, but it was also continuous. If Lin Yi was facing an ordinary early-stage foundation establishment expert, this punch alone would be enough to injure the other party. However, the problem was that he was facing a giant eagle that was at least in the middle stage of the foundation establishment realm. Although the 22 forms of the frenzied fire fist were overbearing enough to ordinary early-stage foundation establishment experts, it was far from enough to deal with the natural overlord of the sky in front of him. Originally, Lin Yi did not have high expectations for this punch of his, but purely out of the pride of a cultivator, he did not want to be captured without putting up a fight. However, to his surprise, in the face of his 22 forms of the frenzied fire fist, this seemingly arrogant vicious bird actually chose to retreat. What's going on? Could it be that this fellow is just a bluff? Lin Yi could not help but feel surprised. When one's strength reached the level of the foundation establishment realm, almost all spiritual beasts' intelligence was no different from that of humans, so it was not strange for them to have all kinds of human-like thoughts. However, it was easier to change mountains and rivers than to change one's nature. According to common sense, no matter how strong these spiritual beasts were, they would not change their brave and aggressive nature. This was especially true for a battle-type spiritual beast like the giant eagle that was born to kill. If this giant eagle was really incomparably strong like what Lin Yi speculated, it should have the strength of a middle-stage foundation establishment realm or above. Facing this 22 forms of the frenzied fire fist, it should not have chosen to dodge, but instead, it should have directly crushed him with its claws. However, no matter what, this giant eagle did choose to retreat in the face of the 22 forms of the frenzied fire fist. However, immediately after, it fiercely flapped its wings towards Lin Yi. Whoosh! At such a close distance, being fiercely flapped by a pair of wings that had a wingspan of 15 feet, what kind of feeling was that? He did not know how other people would feel, but Lin Yi felt that he was about to die. Within the wind brought up by the giant eagle's wings, there was also an indescribable force. When it smashed onto his body, it had a force of several tons, causing Lin Yi's 5 viscera and 6 bowels to begin to shift as if they were being torn apart. Chapter 3668. Even if he was not torn apart by the astral wind, Lin Yi was still in a precarious situation. The rock behind him, which he used as an anchor, was torn apart by the astral wind. Losing his footing, Lin Yi lost his footing and fell. Fortunately, he still had 2 coils of rattan rope tied around his body. This was a life-saving rope. However, Lin Yi suddenly saw a trace of human-like mockery in the giant eagle's ghostly eyes. Its blood diamond-like beak opened slightly, and a visible force easily cut the rattan rope through the air. Fuck. Lin Yi couldn't help but curse. No wonder it chose to retreat when facing his 22 frenzied fiery fist. It turned out that this ferocious bird didn't treat him as an opponent from the beginning to the end, but was teasing him. This situation was like a cat catching a mouse. First, the cat had to toy with the mouse enough before it was willing to kill it. Lin Yi never thought that he, a dignified early-stage foundation establishment expert, would have such a tragic day. What was even more tragic was that when a mouse was teased by a cat, it could at least escape 2 steps. But now he didn't even have the slightest chance to dodge. At the critical moment when the rattan rope broke, Lin Yi reached out and grabbed the swaying branch. At this moment, the heart-devouring exquisite grass was right under his eyes, but he didn't even have the chance to reach out and grab it. At this moment, Lin Yi didn't have the slightest chance to fight back. Like a mouse, he had been forced to the last corner. No matter which direction he ran in, he would only be pulled back by the cat's claws and bitten to death. Besides the mockery, Lin Yi finally saw a cruel killing intent in the pair of eagle eyes. It was obvious that this overlord-level ferocious bird had played enough. At this moment, the ghostly voice suddenly sounded in Lin Yi's mind. "Kid, you've been forced to this point, don't tell me you still want to hold on by yourself. Are you really not afraid of death? With your strength, it's not shameful to lose to the ghost-eyed golden eagle in this kind of place." Ghost-eyed golden eagle? Lin Yi was taken aback for a moment, but then he saw the vicious bird above him open its beak wide, and a majestic zhenqi rapidly condensed. For a moment, a violent wind blew, and sand and stones flew everywhere. This guy was really prepared to kill him. Compared to this kind of power, Lin Yi's 22 styles of frenzy fist just now were simply unable to withstand a single blow. It was completely not enough. Lin Yi believed that once the frightening energy in its mouth was released, it would definitely be able to withstand it. He had absolutely no chance of escaping. "Little fellow, have you had enough?" At this time, a cloud of black fog suddenly floated out from the space of the jade pendant. The ghostly thing appeared and indifferently said to the ghost-eyed golden eagle. After seeing the ball of black mist, the ghost-eyed golden eagle's aura obviously stopped. After being stunned for a moment, it suddenly retracted its wings in fear and trepidation, and the condensed genuine qi in its mouth quickly dissipated. Then it spoke in the human language. "This little beast greets Senior. I didn't know Senior was here and offended you. Please forgive me." When one's strength reached the middle stage of the foundation establishment realm, it was very normal for one to be able to speak the human language. It was not surprising at all. The reason why it did not speak to Lin Yi before was very simple. In its eyes, Lin Yi was just a small prey. As a predator, how could it have feelings for its prey? "Since you know that this old man is here, then why don't you hurry up and scram?" Although it was still a spiritual communication, but at this moment, from the aura of the ghostly thing, Lin Yi felt an unprecedented majesty. To be precise, this was the aura that only the legendary upper echelons could possess. Yes. The ghost-eyed golden eagle looked at Lin Yi with fear and trepidation, and then suddenly rose into the sky and quickly left. From its departing figure, Lin Yi could even clearly feel an unconcealable shock and fear. Casually scaring away the insufferably powerful ghost-eyed golden eagle, this seemingly familiar scene immediately reminded Lin Yi of the time when he was facing the Dragon of Five Evils. The ghostly thing had done the same thing. After scaring away the ghost-eyed golden eagle, the ghostly thing quickly returned to the space of the jade pendant. Lin Yi hurriedly said gratefully, "Thank you very much, Senior Ghost, for helping me out. I really can't thank you enough." The ghostly thing chuckled, "Now you know how to be grateful. Why were you so stubborn just now and didn't ask for help from this old man? I thought that you were already capable enough to deal with an existence like the ghost-eyed golden eagle. It turns out that you're just a dead duck with a stubborn mouth. You're purely holding on." Hearing this, Lin Yi could not help but say embarrassedly, "I was in a hurry just now and didn't think about it." These words were somewhat insincere. With Lin Yi's memory, of course, he remembered the ghostly thing's ability. He knew that this mysterious senior had a special way of dealing with this kind of spirit beast. But the problem was that he had never encountered a spirit beast in the Foundation establishment stage before. What if the ghostly thing's ability was useless and its primordial spirit was injured by the spirit beast after it came out? Wouldn't that be terrible? Lin Yi's little thoughts could not escape the ghostly thing's eyes. It chuckled and said, Actually, when you encountered the nine-tailed cloud-piercing leopard, this old man wanted to help you. But you, kid, are pretty awesome. Without saying a word, you relied on your early Foundation establishment stage strength to take care of that guy. You've really broadened this old man's horizons. After a pause, the ghostly thing continued, but if you can even deal with the ghost-eyed golden eagle, then this old man will really have to find a chance to slice you up for research. Or I might even suspect that you've been possessed by a powerful primordial spirit. Fortunately, it's not as exaggerated as I imagined. Slice him up for research? And possessed by a powerful primordial spirit? Cold sweat immediately slid down Lin Yi's forehead. This ghostly senior thought quite a lot. Senior Ghost, you've overestimated me. This ghost-eyed golden eagle is so ferocious, how could I possibly be its opponent? From beginning to end, I haven't even touched a single strand of its hair. Instead, I've been toyed with by it. Lin Yi laughed bitterly and gloomily. Then he asked doubtfully, speaking of which, forgive me for being curious. Senior Ghost, what is your background? Even a powerful existence like the ghost-eyed golden eagle is so afraid of you? It was more than afraid. Although the ghost-eyed golden eagle had been forcefully maintaining its imposing manner, after the ghostly thing appeared, Lin Yi clearly felt that all the muscles in its body had stiffened. Even the flapping of its wings was very difficult. If it was not careful, it might directly fall down. Judging from all the signs, this was completely an instinctive trembling from the bottom of its heart. It did not seem like some kind of special ability. The cultivation world had always been a place where the weak were prey to the strong. Now that the ghostly thing was only a primordial spirit, it could make the ghost-eyed golden eagle, a ferocious bird of the sky, tremble with fear. Then, when it was at its peak, how powerful was it? Chapter 3669. Oh, okay. Lin Yi was delighted. He had been curious about the origin of this ghost thing for a long time. Today he could finally uncover the truth. But before that, the most important matter for him at this moment was naturally to collect the heart-devouring exquisite grass that was right in front of him. To be honest, after experiencing the powerful gale of the ghost-eyed golden eagle, the heart-devouring exquisite grass was still able to stay here intact. This really made Lin Yi very surprised and glad. If the heart-devouring exquisite grass had been blown away along with the rocks, then he would really not be able to find a grave even if he cried. With one hand grabbing the tree trunk to stabilize his body, the other hand swiftly collected all the heart-devouring exquisite grass into his bag. The remaining task was how to return to the ground. The vine rope had been broken by the ghost-eyed golden eagle, but this did not prevent Lin Yi from climbing up. Once a human animal was forced into a desperate situation, they could do anything, not to mention that Lin Yi was an expert in the early stage of Foundation establishment. The stone wall was very steep, but it didn't matter. The stone wall was very smooth, but it also didn't matter. Using the remaining true chi in his body, a punch smashed a deep hole in the cliff, and Lin Yi easily found a point of leverage. One step up, one punch, one step up, and one more punch, leaving a trail of craters in the ground. Just like that, Lin Yi climbed back up to the surface. Entering the space of the jade pendant, while recovering his true chi, Lin Yi said to Gue Dongxi, "Senior Ghost, can you say it now?" The ghost thing did not answer but asked, "You should have guessed this old man's origin, right? Tell me first." Lin Yi was stunned and then replied, "According to my speculation, Senior Ghost should be a native of Heavenly Stage Island, and should be an extraordinary person. I wonder if this speculation is reliable?" The ghost thing smiled noncommittally and said, "Your speculation is half right and half wrong. This old man is indeed born on Heavenly Stage Island. This is true, but when did this old man say that I am a human?" Lin Yi was dumbfounded. After a long while he said, You're not a human? Look at me now. Which part of me looks like a human?" The ghostly thing chuckled. "That's true, but aren't you in the primordial spirit state? It's normal that you don't look like a human." Lin Yi pursed his lips speechlessly. When he first encountered the ghostly thing, he did not treat it as a human but as a ghost. However, even if it was a ghost, the first impression was that it was a ghost that a person had turned into after death. Who would have thought that this guy wasn't a human when he was alive? "Then is your original form a spirit beast?" Lin Yi asked cautiously. Since the other party was not a human, then it must be a spirit beast. Apart from that, he had never heard of any other creatures with spiritual intelligence comparable to that of humans. That's right, this old man is indeed a spirit beast, but as for what this old man's true form is, you don't have to ask. You'll find out when the time comes. The ghostly thing paused, then said, "You've been in the Welcome Pavilion for a long time. You should have heard of the Spirit Beast clan, right?" It really was a spirit beast. Linny suddenly remembered that when he was in the secular world, the puppet clone that the ghostly thing released, Xiao Yi, could not use martial arts. At that time, the ghostly thing said that Xiao Yi's physique was not suitable for using martial arts. At that time Linny was quite puzzled. However, now that he thought about it, the ghostly thing was a spirit beast just like the purple electric beast of wind and thunder. Perhaps it was good at lightning or external martial arts. It would be strange if Xiao Yi's puppet could use it. Linny nodded and said, "In my spare time, I heard Senior Brother Lu and Senior Brother Ku mention it. It is said that on the south island of Heaven Stage Island, a large number of high-level spirit beasts have gathered. Each of them is extremely powerful, and they have formed a powerful force called the Spirit Beast Clan." That's right. Do you know how the Spirit Beast Clan came to be? You should know that in the beginning all the spirit beasts, no matter how powerful they were on their own. Just like what you saw outside the back mountain, they killed each other. They never joined forces, let alone formed a huge force, the ghostly thing said with a sigh. "I'm all ears." Linny pricked up his ears. This was a great opportunity to learn about the forces of Heaven Stage Island. It might be useful in the future, so he naturally had to remember it. The formation of the Spirit Beast clan originated from a spirit beast, the most powerful spirit beast in history. We call it the King of Spirit Beast. The ghostly thing's tone was filled with unparalleled awe and admiration. It continued, "Its power cannot be described with simple words. You only need to know one thing to understand. 10,000 years ago, in order to suppress its rise, the three strongest human masters on Heaven Stage Island joined forces to fight it. However, the final result was that it was never defeated." Never defeated also meant never winning. However, Linny was still in awe because in the face of the three strongest human masters joining forces, not being defeated meant victory. Linny was only a master in the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm. He was only at the beginning stage on Heaven Stage Island. He had no idea how strong the strongest person could be, but this did not prevent him from imagining the scene of that battle. That battle must have been a great battle that was recorded in history. Ever since that battle, no one has been able to stop its footsteps. It has defeated the most powerful spirit beasts one by one and made them submit to its feet. They followed it to garrison the south island of Heaven Stage Island, dominating a region of its own. From then on, the so-called Spirit Beast clan came into being. The ghostly thing sighed. Linny interrupted with some doubts. "Senior Ghost, since the Spirit Beast clan is in the South Island, then it should be rare to see them in other places. Why are there so many spirit beasts in the back mountain?" Spirit beasts are different from human beings. It is natural for all races to coexist peacefully. Some are even born to feed on spirit beasts of other races. If they are all put together, it will definitely be a mess. The South Island was once in turmoil because of this problem, but later it was suppressed by the King of Spirit Beasts and he left a rule. Spirit beasts of all races can only enter the South Island when they reach a certain level and are able to completely restrain their animal instincts. Before that, they can only be scattered everywhere as before. For example, the spirit beasts that you've seen in the back of the mountain are killing each other or human cultivators, but the spirit beasts have never interfered. Chapter 3670. Linny suddenly understood. So, before being recognized by the South Island, the spirit beasts in the back mountain are not part of the Spirit Beast clan, and only those particularly powerful spirit beasts are qualified to go to the South Island, right? So, aren't the spirit beasts in the back mountain the leftovers from the South Island? That's right, but not all powerful spirit beasts are willing to join the South Island. After all, after joining the South Island, although you human cultivators don't dare to attack them, they will still be subject to various restrictions. So there are still many powerful spirit beasts who don't belong to the Spirit Beast clan. It's the same as many grassroots rogue cultivators who don't want to join sections. After a pause, the ghost said in a serious tone, "According to my perception, there are many powerful spirit beasts in the back mountain who are powerful enough to join the South Island. Some of them are even comparable to the top masters of the Spirit Beast clan. Since they stay here, it means that they are not willing to join the South Island. This is a loss for the whole Spirit Beast clan." Comparable to the top masters of the Spirit Beast clan? How powerful are they? How are they compared with the ghost-eyed golden eagle just now? Linny asked curiously. Ghost-eyed golden eagle? Although that guy's talent and strength are not bad and it's not a big problem for him to join the South Island if he continues to grow, but compared with the few I mentioned he's not at the same level at all. The ghost laughed mockingly. Really? Linny was a little dumbfounded. With the personal experience just now, a fierce bird like the ghost-eyed golden eagle was already a very powerful existence in his eyes, but in the ghost's mouth, it seemed to be not worth mentioning at all. Kid, the ones I'm talking about are all in the core area of the back mountain. As for their strength, let me put it this way. As long as you walk in front of them, they will only need to blink and you will be dead. The ghostly thing laughed strangely. Jejja. Ugh. Linny froze. He thought that the ghost was exaggerating a little. Although he felt that the ghost's words were a little exaggerated, he still couldn't help being frightened and creeped out. They could kill him with a blink. Intuition told Lin-Yi that what the ghost said was not a lie. In the core of the inner circle of the back mountain, there might really be such a powerful existence. It could be seen that the three great pavilions had their reasons for setting up layers of restrictions in the back mountain. Otherwise, if someone were to barge in blindly, they wouldn't even know how they died. Ghost Senior, how do you compare to them when you're at your peak? Lin-Yi asked with a hopeful look on his face. If they were placed on the North Island of Heaven Island, they wouldn't be able to survive. Your strength is indeed extraordinary, but if you go to the South Island. I'm an elder of the Spirit Beast clan, and my strength is enough to rank in the top 5. What do you think? An elder whose strength is ranked in the top 5? Isn't that a top-notch being among the Spirit Beasts? Although Lin-Yi had long guessed that the ghost had an extraordinary origin, he never thought that it would be extraordinary to this extent. It was actually a core figure of the South Island, which was equivalent to Su Lingchong's grandfather. This was a person that Lin-Yi had to respect. He didn't expect to have one by his side. If that was the case, if the first thing he encountered in the secular world was a ghost at its peak, it wouldn't even need to blink its eyes. Would he have died directly? Recalling the situation of their first encounter, Lin-Yi couldn't help but feel lucky. Fortunately, he had encountered this guy's incomplete spirit at the beginning, otherwise he would have died long ago. Senior Ghost. No, Senior Spirit Beast. Since you're an elder of the Spirit Beast clan, why did you appear in the secular world? Lin-Yi couldn't help asking. Compared to the Spirit Beast clan, there were many human masters on Heaven Stage Island, but he had never heard of anyone taking the initiative to return to the secular world from Heaven Stage Island. The ghost was silent for a moment. Instead of answering directly, it asked, I'm afraid you still have a question that you haven't asked. You're wondering why I fell into such a miserable state since I was so powerful at the beginning, right? Lin-Yi smiled awkwardly. He did have this doubt, but he was afraid to expose the ghost's scars, so he was too embarrassed to ask. As one of the top 5 existences in the Spirit Beast clan, there should be few opponents at the ghost's level. Even if there was someone stronger than him, he could at least run away if he couldn't beat them. It was really unimaginable that he had fallen into such a state with only an incomplete spirit. The ghost sighed and slowly said, the existence of the Spirit Beast clan in the end is condensed on the Spirit Beast King. When it was around, the Spirit Beast clan only had one voice, and could unite into an iron plate, causing all the other powerful sects to fear it. But when it was gone, it gradually returned to a state of independence. Although it was a little better than in the beginning, there were constant conflicts between the factions, and it became a plate of loose sand. The Spirit Beast King is not around? Could it have been killed? Lin-Yi couldn't help but exclaim. According to the ghost's description, this Spirit Beast King could be said to be invincible in the world. Even the top 3 human masters couldn't do anything to it. Lin-Yi really couldn't think of anyone who could deal with this epic existence. This matter actually started from 8 years ago. The ghost sighed and said, 8 years ago the heaven and earth spiritual energy in the entire heavenly island began to thin. At that time, everyone noticed it but no one knew why. At this time, on the middle island of the heavenly island, 2 mysterious people suddenly appeared and gathered all the big shots on the island for a meeting to discuss countermeasures. Of course, only those with top strength were qualified to participate, even I couldn't. As for how the meeting went, I don't know because from then on, our Spirit Beast King disappeared together with those top experts. Disappeared? Lin-Yi's heart suddenly moved. 2 mysterious people? Why was this so similar to what happened in the secular world? Back then it was his master and old Lin who took away those peak late-stage heaven stage great perfection experts. Why did the same thing happen on the heavenly island? But it was pushed back by 5 years. However, Linny didn't think that these two people were Old Lin because Old Lin was still in the secular world. But could one of these two people be his master? Chapter 3671. Their strength was unfathomable. The deputy island master of the middle island was not convinced, but in the end, sigh. Even with the ghost's strength, its voice could not help but tremble as it recalled. He died a horrible death, he was beaten to death. Ah. Linny was stunned. What kind of place was the middle island? It was the most powerful island among the 5 heaven-rank islands. Even if the deputy island master was not as powerful as the island master, to be beaten to death in one blow was really... As for where they came from, no one knew because no one on the island had seen them. I only heard one of them call the other uncle, so the two of them might be relatives. The ghost said. Uncle? Relatives? Linny was even more confused, but this was a question he didn't even know what it was, so naturally he wouldn't be able to get an answer. The ghostly thing continued. After the disappearance of the spiritual beast king, the spiritual beast clan, which used to be united under its suppression, began to gradually split up. A few elders went their own way, ambitious to become the new spiritual beast king. This was not difficult to understand. As long as one was a top master, they would definitely have their own ambitions. When the spiritual beast king was around, they did not dare to show it. However, once there was no such powerful existence above them, their ambitions would awaken like instincts. After all, if one had the strength to compete for the supreme position, why would he be willing to be under someone else? The few elders' strength was about the same, and no one was willing to submit to the other. Thus, they formed a few forces, each occupying a part of the South Island. In this way there were internal conflicts and internal troubles. Outside, there were many human sects eyeing the spiritual beast clan covetously. If this goes on, it is inevitable that the spiritual beast clan will fall apart. After thinking about it, I'm afraid the key to breaking out of this predicament lies with the spiritual beast king, the ghost said slowly. Spiritual beast king? Didn't he disappear? Linny could not help but ask in surprise. The ghost shook its head and said, That's right. The spiritual beast king has indeed gone missing, but he left behind a bloodline in the secular world. As long as we can find his descendant and find a way to awaken the power of his bloodline, he can become the new spiritual beast king and command the spiritual beast clan. Is this possible? Linny felt that the ghost's idea was a little wishful thinking. Even if you found the descendant of the spirit beast king, he was still born in the secular world. Even if there's a way to awaken his bloodline power, his strength shouldn't be as strong as the spirit beast king's. How are we going to convince these ambitious spirit beast elders? This kind of plot was similar to how the assistant ministers supported the young emperor after the death of the emperor. Even if they recognized the young emperor's position on the surface, in reality, the power was still in the hands of the assistant ministers. The young emperor was just a puppet that was manipulated by others. From Lin Yi's point of view, without sufficient strength, even if the ghost managed to find the descendant of the spirit beast king, it would not be able to do so. In the end, he might not even be able to become a puppet emperor. It was very likely that the spiritual beast clan's elders would not acknowledge his position at all. As for commanding the spiritual beast clan, that was out of the question. There's something you don't know. Kid, you should have heard of the level suppression between spirit beasts before, right? The ghostly thing didn't answer but asked a question instead. Linny nodded. I've heard of it. It's said that between spirit beasts, apart from their strength, there's an innate level suppression. One level suppresses the other, and there's never been such a thing as fighting an enemy with a higher level. That's right. Only between spirit beasts of the same level, strength will determine who's stronger and who's weaker. Otherwise there's no need to fight at all. The low-level spirit beasts themselves will shrink back in fear. The ghost paused, then added, however, this rule is only limited to spirit beasts below the heavenly way. When the spirit beast's strength grows to the heavenly way, which is above the foundation establishment stage, it will possess super-high spiritual intelligence and be able to break through this level suppression. In other words, even if it's a naturally lower-level spirit beast, as long as it's strong enough, it can still kill a higher-level spirit beast that's weaker than it. Taking the few powerful spirit beasts that Linny had encountered before, for example, the ghost-eyed golden eagle's strength was naturally higher than the nine-tailed cloud-piercing leopard's. In general, its strength would also be much stronger than the nine-tailed cloud-piercing leopard. However, it must be known that even a powerful spirit beast like the ghost-eyed golden eagle wouldn't be born with the powerful strength of the foundation establishment middle stage. When it was in its infancy, its strength might only be at the earth stage or even lower. At this time, if it encountered a nine-tailed cloud-piercing leopard that was below the heaven stage, even if its true combat strength was stronger than the other party could rely on its natural spiritual beast pressure to scare it away. However, if they were both adults that had broken through the heavenly way, assuming that the nine-tailed cloud-piercing leopard had the strength of the Foundation Establishment early stage and the ghost-eyed golden eagle had the strength of the Foundation Establishment early stage, the nine-tailed cloud-piercing leopard's spiritual beast pressure would be useless. The ghost-eyed golden eagle could rely on its powerful strength to kill it instead. But in this case, isn't the descendant of the spirit beast king even more useless? Since the level suppression is only effective for those below the heavenly way, those powerful spirit beast elders don't need to care about it at all? After listening to this explanation, Linny was even more puzzled. No, the level suppression rule that this old man told you is applicable to all spirit beasts, but the spirit beast king is an exception. He is an existence that surpasses all rules. His bloodline is naturally the king among spirit beasts. The ghostly thing's calm tone suddenly had an additional trace of scorching heat and reverence. Surpasses all rules, a natural king? Lin Yi's heart trembled. His bloodline can naturally kill all spirit beasts. Even if it's a powerful spirit beast above the heavenly way stage, or even elders like us, in front of his bloodline, we can only bow our heads in submission. Therefore, as long as we can find his descendant and awaken his bloodline, even the weakest yellow-level spirit beast can suppress the entire spirit beast clan and not let anyone have any disloyal thoughts. The ghostly thing said excitedly. This is really exaggerated. Linny couldn't help but open his mouth wide. Regardless of whether they were strong or weak, they could kill all spirit beasts. This kind of unreasonable level suppression was practically like cheating. Being able to suppress the entire spirit beast clan from birth, was there anything more exaggerated and shameless than this in this world? If that was the case, not only the spirit beast clan, but the entire spirit beast world was simply the back garden of the spirit beast king's family. As long as their bloodline was passed down, all spirit beasts from top to bottom could only work for them. There was absolutely no possibility of a counterattack. Chapter 3672. In this case, if we can find the descendants of the spirit beast king, we can really solve the problem of the spirit beast clan. Linny thought for a while and then asked, Senior, did you go to the secular world because of this? Yes. The ghost nodded. Then how did you become like this? Linny asked with a strange expression. With the ghost's strength, it should be considered powerful even in the entire Heaven Stage Island. In the secular world it should be invincible. How did it fall into such a miserable state? Its body was gone, and only an incomplete spirit was left. The ghost smiled bitterly and said, Boy, you also know that there is a spirit chi boundary between Heaven Stage Island and the secular world. Not only is it not easy to come up from the secular world to Heaven Stage Island, but it is also very troublesome to go down from Heaven Stage Island to the secular world. Is that so? Linny was stunned. He only knew that the spirit chi boundary restricted the entrance to Heaven Stage Island from the secular world, but he didn't expect that the return journey was the same. Wouldn't it be troublesome to go back to the secular world in the future? When you were teleported from the secular world to Heaven Stage Island, there must be a cultivator of the 5 elements and 7 inheritors to suppress the spirit chi boundary. Then, there must be a demon sect disciple to absorb the 5 evils devil chi released by the boundary to open a gap. It was the same for me to go down from Heaven Stage Island to the secular world, but I didn't have the help of an inheritor, so I could only rely on my own strength to break through. Even now, the ghost seemed to have a lingering fear when it talked about this matter. Linny was speechless. So many people, including himself, had to go through so much trouble to barely break through the spirit chi boundary, but the ghost actually relied on the strength of one person to break through. How strong was it? In the end, I successfully descended into the secular world, but the price I paid was serious injuries. The spiritual energy in the secular world was too poor, and there was no way to heal and recover. After wandering for a few years, I still couldn't find the king's bloodline. In the end, I was seriously injured and died. The ghost sighed. Linny wanted to express his condolences, but when he saw the black mist in front of him, he swallowed the words that were on the tip of his tongue. Linny rolled his eyes and choked for a while. He couldn't help but complain in his heart, since I'm already seriously injured and on the verge of death, what is this thing in front of me? When the ghost noticed Lin Yi's strange expression, it explained, "If it was any other spiritual beast, it would have been annihilated long ago. However, my innate ability is rather special. I can preserve my primordial spirit after death." "I see." Lin Yi suddenly understood. Although the ghost didn't say what his talent was, he couldn't help but think of Zhong Pingliang. He had been possessed by August Patriarch Wild Dragon's nascent divinity. Lin Yi reckoned that the ghost's innate ability should not be too far off from the everyday sect's secret technique of preserving one's primordial spirit. The ghost then fell silent. As for what happened after it became a nascent spirit, it didn't continue to say. But Lin Yi could guess that it must have wandered around miserably until it met him. Before this, the ghost gave Lin Yi a feeling that, besides being mysterious, there was also an indescribable stubbornness. But after listening to these words, he suddenly felt that the experience of this senior ghost was simply a bitter tear. Who knew the bitterness? "Then, are you going to the South Island next?" Lin Yi asked cautiously. "It depends on the situation. With my current appearance, what can I do if I go back to the South Island? If I don't have the strength, it's better to not see it and not worry about it." The ghost laughed at itself, paused for a moment and then said, "When your strength reaches a certain level, I may ask you for a favor. But now you'd better focus on your cultivation first. If you dare to go to the South Island with your little strength, you won't even be able to fill the gap between people's teeth." Lin Yi was speechless and laughed. Although what the ghost said was the truth, this kind of words was a bit too shocking. But anyway, now that he had figured out the ghost's origin, Lin Yi's hanging heart finally fell to the ground. At the same time, he secretly rejoiced in his heart. With such a spiritual beast senior as a backer, even if he didn't have powerful strength now, he was still a huge treasure. After a quiet night, when Lin Yi recovered to his peak state and came out of the space of the jade pendant, it was already the next day. Since the heart-devouring exquisite grass was in his hand, the main purpose of this trip had been achieved. For Lin Yi, the next step was quite a bit without any desire. Of course, the so-called without desire didn't mean doing nothing. It was rare for him to participate in the newcomer's trial test. If he didn't get the first place in the trial test, Lin Yi would feel sorry for Thunder Pig, the treasure-hunting cheating tool. After all, the reward of a Foundation Establishment pill and 10 pieces of spiritual jades was quite tempting even for Lin Yi. The value of the Foundation Establishment pill was needless to say. Even if Lin Yi didn't need it, it was a good thing for Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai. As their leader, Lin Yi had to at least fight for some benefits for them in order to make them loyal to him. As for the 10 pieces of spiritual jades, Lin Yi was in urgent need of spiritual jades. Moreover, these 10 pieces of spiritual jades were in his hands so openly. Meng Jueguang and the other unscrupulous guys would definitely think of ways to exchange for them with waste jades. In that case, for Lin Yi, the value would not just be 10 pieces of spiritual jades, but at least 30 pieces of spiritual jades. This was not a small number. Releasing Thunder Pig, Lu Ming searched for spiritual herbs nearby to quickly increase his points. Following the map, he identified the direction and headed towards the Three Creeks mouth that Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai had agreed on before the trial began. Because of the landmark terrain on the map, Lin Yi could easily confirm his position after determining the direction. Although according to the agreement he only needed to arrive at the Three Creeks mouth at noon the day before the trial ended, so he still had an extra day. Lin Yi's current position was too far away from the Three Creeks mouth. Adding on the fact that he had to spend some energy gathering spiritual herbs along the way, and adding on the fact that it was inconvenient to move at night, it was already not too early to set off. After a whole day of trekking with the help of Thunder Pig, the treasure-hunting cheating tool, Lin Yi's points on the basket had already risen to a high of 1,808 points. This number of points was comparable to the best score in all the previous newcomers' trials. Chapter 3673. After all, as an alchemist, even if he wasn't a mainstream alchemist, he still had to prepare his own medicinal herb storehouse. Otherwise, he would have to make a trip to the market to buy all the medicinal herbs he needed to refine a pill in the future. Many of them might even be like the heart-devouring exquisite grass that he couldn't buy even if he wanted to. That was simply a scam. With such a medicinal herb storehouse, although it was inevitable that he would need to collect some specific medicinal herbs, it would save him some unnecessary trouble. At least he wouldn't need to run around for some basic medicinal herbs and waste too much energy. At noon the next day, Lin Yi appeared at the Three Creek mouth as promised. He originally thought that Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai would arrive soon. Even if it was difficult to locate them in the dense forest of the back mountain, the Three Creek mouth that he chose was still very recognizable. Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai were Heaven Stage Great Perfection experts, so they wouldn't be so weak. However, Lin Yi wandered around the Three Creek mouth and waited for a full hour, but he didn't see the two of them. He couldn't help but mutter in his heart, did the two of them encounter some trouble? If the two of them came at different times, it would be understandable. After all, in the outskirts of the back mountain, unexpected things might happen during the journey. It was normal to not be able to reach the destination according to the plan. However, the two of them were nowhere to be seen, so there was a problem. Could it be that Meng Tong and his gang made a move on them in advance? Lin Yi's heart moved slightly. Although judging from the time, it was the last day for the newcomers to return to the back mountain hall. Snatching at this time would be the best choice to maximize the benefits, but on the other hand, any newcomer would definitely be extra careful at this time and wouldn't easily leave any flaws. And if he did the opposite, he would make a move a little earlier. Although he would gain less in this way, he could catch the target off guard. This was not necessarily a bad choice. According to the performance before the trial, Meng Tong and his gang were definitely looking for an opportunity to make a move. Lin Yi originally thought that the other party's main target would be him. After all, he had always been a thorn in the other party's side, but he didn't think that these people would first look for Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai. If Meng Tong's conjecture was correct, then this fellow Meng Tong had indeed made some progress. If he dared to directly bring people to stop him, Lin Yi wouldn't mind showing him why flowers were so red. But if he skipped him and directly looked for Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai, even Lin Yi wouldn't be able to come up with a suitable countermeasure. The most troublesome problem was that Lin Yi didn't know where Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai were. It had to be known that there was no such thing as a cell phone communication device on Heaven Stage Island. Even if there was, there wouldn't be a signal. And if he rashly went out to look for them, not to mention that the possibility of finding the two in this vast mountain forest was very slim, what if his guess was wrong? If it was Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai, it was because they encountered some other trouble and were delayed. If Lin Yi left Three Creek Mouth at this time, he would really miss the opportunity to meet the two of them. The location of Three Creek Mouth was a place that was relatively easy to identify on the map provided by the back mountain hall. Since Lin Yi and his gang would set this place as the gathering point, then what about Meng Tong and his gang? They had the advantage in numbers, so if they wanted to gather, they would need such a highly recognizable location. Could it be that they wouldn't come here? And if his guess was really wrong, and Lin Yi rashly left this place to look for the two of them, by the time Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai came here with great difficulty, the situation would be even more dangerous. After thinking for a while, Lin Yi finally decided to wait at Three Creek Mouth for another half a day. This was also the wisest choice he could make at this moment. In the next half a day, if Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai arrived, then it would naturally be a happy ending. If Meng Tong and his gang arrived, then it wouldn't be a bad thing. With Lin Yi's strength, it would be more than enough to deal with a group of them. As for the last possibility, if Lin Yi didn't wait for anyone here, then although it wasn't good news, at least it would let Lin Yi confirm one thing. Xiao Ran and his gang were really in trouble, and he was basically sure that it was Meng Tong and his gang's doing. While waiting, Lin Yi let the Skybolt pig search for elixirs near Three Creek Mouth. Half a day passed in a flash, and the sky was about to turn dark in the blink of an eye. However, from the beginning to the end, Lin Yi still didn't see anyone. With that, Lin Yi had a pretty good grasp of the situation. Xiao Ran and Xiao Luo were most likely ambushed by Meng Tong's group. Xiao Ran was originally a Heaven Realm full circle expert. After this period of cultivation, he should have touched the barrier of the heavenly Tao. As for Xiao Hongkai, although she was originally at the peak of Heaven Realm late stage, she had now successfully advanced to Heaven Realm full circle. Among the group of newcomers in Blue Cloud Pavilion, the two of them weren't weak. In a one-on-one fight, they should have a good chance of winning. However, the problem was that two fists couldn't fight against four hands. The other newcomers weren't easy to deal with. Even if they couldn't beat the two of them in a one-on-one fight, they were still Heaven Realm full circle experts. Facing so many people, even if Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai ran into each other, they definitely had no chance of winning. They could only escape. If it was someone else, even if they escaped, they would definitely escape in the direction of Three Creek Mouth. After all, if they could meet up with Lin Yi on the way, they would have more strength. However, Lin Yi knew that with their honest character, once they really encountered such trouble, they would definitely not take half a step in the direction of Three Creek Mouth. Instead, they would choose the opposite direction. Because if they ran in the direction of Three Creek Mouth, although they had the chance to meet up with Lin Yi, they would also transfer the danger to Lin Yi. No matter how confident they were in Lin Yi's strength, they didn't think that he could deal with more than 10 Heaven Realm Full Circle experts led by Meng Tong at the same time. After all, like the others, they didn't know that Lin Yi was now a Foundation Establishment early-stage expert. They thought that Lin Yi was just a Heaven Realm Full Circle expert who was slightly stronger than the others. Because of this concern, according to Lin Yi's speculation, the final choice that the two would make was to abandon the Rook to protect the general. In other words, by abandoning themselves, they would ensure Lin Yi's safety. Chapter 3674. Lin Yi took out the map and decided to make an exception and travel through the night. He had to get ahead of Meng Tong's group and reach the only way back to the back mountain hall. Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongsai's current situation could only be described in two ways. Either the herbs had been stolen, or the herbs had not been stolen and they were still on the road to escape. Regardless of the outcome, the two of them, along with Meng Tong's group, had to return to the back mountain hall before noon. Otherwise, according to the bald elder at the back mountain hall, no matter who it was, they would die a horrible death. This was simple. Lin Yi only had to rush to the back mountain hall before everyone else. Whether he met Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai first or Meng Tong's group first, he would be able to solve the problem. As long as he had great strength, no matter how complicated the problem was, it could be easily solved. As soon as he thought about it, Lin Yi put the Skybolt pig into the space in the jade pendant and immediately set off. It was said before that in the back mountains, even in the outer area where the danger level was the lowest, it was still extremely dangerous for a Foundation Establishment practitioner like Lin Yi to move around at night. This was because not only would his senses be weakened, it would be easy for him to get lost, and it would be easy for him to run into powerful spirit beasts that he would not see during the day. One must know that by nature many spirit beasts would only come out at night to look for food. Simply put, if Lin Yi had a 50% chance of winning against an early-stage Foundation Establishment spirit beast during the day, then at night, he might not even have a 30% chance of winning. No matter how strong a cultivator was, there was one thing that could not be changed. Humans were not nocturnal creatures. The night had always stood on the opposite side of humans. Fortunately, the moonlight was still bright that night, so Lin Yi would not get lost halfway. Along the way, he passed by a few powerful spirit beasts. Among them, there were even dangerous existences that were comparable to the nine-tailed cloud leopard. But in the end, Lin Yi dodged all of them. Of course, even if they couldn't avoid it, it wouldn't be a problem. After all, the spirit beast god was still guarding the space inside the jade pendant. Wouldn't it be a piece of cake to scare away these spirit beasts that were only at the early stage of the Foundation Establishment realm? After traveling for an entire night, Lin Yi finally arrived at his destination when the sky turned bright. His current location was less than 20 miles away from the rear mountain hall. It was a rare open space in the periphery of the rear mountain. The reason for this was that there was an ancient tree that was at least 300 feet tall growing here, in a dense forest that was no taller than 100 feet. This ancient tree could be said to be a crane in a flock of chickens. Its huge canopy blocked most of the sunlight, so naturally nothing could grow below it. Thus it looked rather empty. Standing on the canopy, the excellent field of vision meant that he could perfectly monitor everything around him. This happened to be the only way back to the rear mountain hall. As for the movements of the other newcomers from the soaring pavilion and the mysterious pavilion, Lin Yi had no way of knowing. But at least the newcomers from the blue cloud pavilion who were placed in this direction would not be able to slip past him. Standing at Lin Yi's height and looking down, it was impossible. If one or two people moved stealthily, there might be a possibility of missing them. But if Meng Tong and the others moved together, it was impossible. After standing guard for half an hour, as Lin Yi expected, a dense commotion came from not far below, startling a flock of weak birds. There were people approaching quickly and there were quite a few of them. Lin Yi observed with rapt attention. The corners of his mouth curled into a playful smile. Judging from the commotion, those people seemed to be heading right for him. "Brother Xiao, you go first. I'll bring up the rear for you. Anyway, all the herbs on me have been snatched away. They can't do anything to me." Xiao Hongkai followed closely behind Xiao Ran and suggested anxiously. Unlike Lin Yi, who was placed in the most dangerous area of the rear mountain, Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongsai's initial drop-off point did not receive any special treatment. In the beginning, the two of them had a relatively smooth journey and collected quite a number of herbs. But that was where the problem arose. Their drop-off point was not far from the other newcomers. Just a day later, the two of them naturally encountered the other newcomers. Without any surprise, they were targeted by Meng Tong and the others. Just as the two of them were on their way to Sanshiko to meet up with Lin Yi, Xiao Hongkai was the first to be ambushed. With his strength, he could not deal with Meng Tong and the others. Not only were the herbs that he had painstakingly collected stolen, he was also heavily injured. If it wasn't for the bald elder's repeated warnings not to kill anyone, he would have been the first newcomer to die in this trial. After the successful ambush and ruthlessly ridiculing Xiao Hongkai, Meng Tong and the others turned to deal with Xiao Ran. However, they did not expect that Xiao Hongkai, who was tailing them, would find Xiao Ran first. This caused Meng Tong's ambush plan to fail, and the two of them successfully broke out of the encirclement. Just as Lin Yi had predicted, the two of them did not want to implicate Lin Yi, so they decided to give up on Sanshiko. Instead, they turned and ran towards the rear mountain hall. As long as they could reach the rear mountain hall before Meng Tong and the others could catch up to them, even if the trial ended, Meng Tong and the others would not be able to steal Xiao Ran's herbs. That was how the current scene came to be. The two of them were running wildly in front, while Meng Tong and his group were chasing after them about 100 feet behind them. Xiao Hongkai was already injured, and when they broke out of the encirclement, Xiao Ran had already consumed a large amount of his vital energy. After this period of running with all his strength, his vital energy was about to be exhausted. If this continued, before they could reach the rear mountain hall, the two of them would be the first to fall. At this time, Xiao Hongkai had made this suggestion. It was obvious that she had the idea of being barefoot and not afraid of wearing shoes. In any case, he had no more herbs, and Meng Tong and the others did not dare to kill him directly. Dragging it out for a while was better than the two of them collapsing together. Unexpectedly, Xiao Ran was panting heavily as he rejected the idea. No. Although they do not dare to kill you directly, you have ruined their plans. In a fit of anger, they might cripple you and abolish your cultivation. I cannot let you take this risk. Hearing Xiao Ran's words, Xiao Hongkai was suddenly shocked, and her heart was filled with a lingering fear. Yes, although the rules of the trial forbade killing, there was no rule that said that people could not be abolished. If her cultivation was really abolished, she would become a cripple. That would be worse than death. Chapter 3675. Xiao Ran shook his head helplessly. Let's just take it one step at a time. The worst-case scenario is that the spiritual herbs will be stolen. It's not a big deal. That's the only way. If only Boss Lin Yi was here. Although he might not be able to deal with so many people at once, he would have a way. Xiao Hongkai sighed. Unknowingly, the way he addressed Lin Yi had changed from the polite brother Lin to Boss Lin Yi. Although it sounded vulgar, it was more intimate and respectful. Xiao Ran laughed bitterly. I actually hope that he's not here. If his spiritual herbs are also stolen, then we really won't gain anything from this trial. It's a pity that my spiritual herbs will definitely be taken by Meng Tong. If that happens, even if Boss Lin Yi doesn't get implicated by us, it will be very difficult for him to get first place. Xiao Hongkai sighed dejectedly. His luck in this trial was actually quite good. In less than 2 days, his points were already close to 500. If his spiritual herbs weren't stolen and he was able to complete his mission smoothly, there was a high chance that he could get a good ranking in the end. But now all his words were in vain. Not only did he not get a single spiritual herb, but it also had the opposite effect of helping the enemy and became an obstacle for Lin Yi. Even if Meng Tong gets first place in the end, Boss Lin Yi still has a chance to fight for the top 3. But if my spiritual herbs are also stolen, then even the top 3 will be uncertain. Therefore, the spiritual herbs on my back cannot fall into their hands. Xiao Ran looked at the basket on his back and said with a determined expression. He was ambushed by Meng Tong's group later than Xiao Hongkai, so he had more time to collect spiritual herbs. Now he had 523 points. This result could only be considered average in previous years. But this year's situation was different. Meng Tong's group began to gather at noon on the second day of the trial. Although they successfully robbed Xiao Hongkai, it was a very risky choice. This was because the time they had to collect spiritual herbs was also greatly reduced. In other words, their current situation was not good. Only a few of them would be able to reach the threshold of 500 points. If they managed to escape, Xiao Ran's 523 points could possibly get him into the top 5. Even the top 3 was not impossible. In that case, even if Meng Tong got first place, Lin Yi and Xiao Ran would still get a good ranking in the end. They'd go for wool and come home shorn. However, if even Xiao Ran's share was snatched away, then the situation would be very different. After ensuring that Meng Tong was first place, he could casually distribute the 500 points. This group of people could easily monopolize the top 3. In that case, not only would Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai gain nothing, even Lin Yi would only get 3 pieces of spiritual jades for the 4th to 10th place. Compared to Meng Tong's bountiful harvest, this was simply a tragic sight. So, Xiao Ran could not let Meng Tong's group succeed no matter what. This was not only for himself but also for Lin Yi. Oh right, did you notice that Meng Tong and Li Jingming did not bring their baskets? Xiao Ran suddenly asked. Xiao Hongkai was stunned for a moment. She thought for a while and said, I think so. If you didn't mention it, I wouldn't have noticed it. Could it be that these 2 people had already been robbed by boss Lin Yi and didn't even leave their baskets? That's impossible. These baskets are the property of the back mountain hall. There can't be any mistakes. Even if they are allowed to rob each other, the baskets must still be left behind. Isn't your basket still on your back? Xiao Ran pointed at Xiao Hongkai's back. Although all the spiritual herbs had been robbed, Xiao Hongkai was still carrying the basket on her back. It was just that her points were displayed as 0. That's true. Then there's only one possibility left. These 2 people must have hidden their baskets before they came out to rob the spiritual herbs. I guess they were afraid that something unexpected would happen and boss Lin Yi would rob us instead. Xiao Hongkai speculated. Xiao Ran nodded, I think so too. But the others who came with them still had their spiritual herbs. Only these 2 people hid their spiritual herbs. How cunning. As the 2 of them spoke, they had already reached the empty space under the giant tree. Their hearts were immediately filled with joy. They had an impression of this giant tree. Being able to reach here meant that they were not far from the back mountain hall. However, before the 2 of them could finish their joy, 2 figures suddenly appeared in front of them, causing their eyelids to twitch. These 2 figures were Meng Tong and Li Jingming, who had been chasing closely behind them. Are you 2 born in the year of the rabbit? You run pretty fast. Unfortunately, you still can't escape from my grasp. Meng Tong laughed sinisterly as he blocked the front. Among the newcomers in the Blue Cloud Pavilion, other than the freak Lin Yi, he and Li Jingming were outstanding in strength. Moreover, they were not like Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai, who were exhausted and injured. It was not surprising that they could block the front. In fact, if not for Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai running with all their might, they would have been blocked by Meng Tong and company. Xiao Ran's heart sank. He turned his head to look behind him. The other newcomers' footsteps were getting closer. If he was entangled by Meng Tong and company, the consequences would be disastrous. Don't stop. Leave these 2 to me. Before Xiao Ran could react, Xiao Hongkai had already taken the lead and rushed towards Meng Tong and company. Xiao Ran took a deep breath. Since things had come to this, he had no other choice. He could only bite the bullet and break through the encirclement. Seeing the 2 approaching him quickly, Meng Tong could not help but laugh contemptuously. 2 idiots who don't know what's good for them. They know that they are courting death, yet they still dare to come to me. Li Jingming, I'll leave the injured lumber waste to you. As for Xiao Ran, leave him to me. Li Jingming looked at him. At this moment, both Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai were like an arrow at the end of its flight. However, there was still a difference between the 2 of them. The biggest difference was that one of them had elixirs while the other didn't. Meng Tong had a cloth bag tied on his back. Inside it were the elixirs that he had snatched from Xiao Hongkai. Now that he had his eyes on Xiao Ran, wouldn't it mean that the elixirs would belong to him in the end? Wouldn't he leave none for himself? Alright, but I want half of the elixirs on Xiao Ran. Li Jingming said. His demands were not high. From the beginning he had never thought of fighting with Meng Tong for first place. As long as he could ensure that the top 3 would get the Foundation Establishment pill, he would be satisfied. Chapter 3676. Unlike them, Lin Yi did not have to waste a lot of time chasing and intercepting them. He had plenty of time to collect spiritual herbs. Meng Tong looked at them and curled his lips. As long as I can get first place, I'll share some with you. What are you waiting for? Stop being so wishy-washy. Alright. Li Jingming swallowed his anger and charged at Xiao Hongkai. Don't waste your energy. Just give up. You can't escape. How will you know if you don't try? As Xiao Hongkai spoke, he gathered all his remaining true qi on his palm. 20 forms of cold iron palm. To prevent accidents, heaven-grade divine weapons were not allowed to be used in the trial. Of course, with Qiao Hongsai's background, it was impossible for him to have any heaven-grade divine weapons. In an instant, a visible giant flaming saber came crashing down. This was his trump card. At its peak, it could severely injure an unguarded heaven-grade full-cycle master. Although its power had been weakened, it was still not to be underestimated. Go Xiaoran. Qiao Hongkai gritted his teeth and roared. If his attack landed on top of Li Jingming and Meng Tong's heads, they would definitely retreat, which would open up a path for Xiaoran. However, before he could finish his sentence, Li Jingming did not dodge the flaming saber. Instead, he took the initiative to face it. His face was expressionless, and without warning, he threw a punch at him. Sky Frost Fist. Whoosh. A strong and majestic white true chi whizzed past, and the overwhelming flaming saber disappeared in an instant, as if it had never appeared. Only shattered ice crystals were left on the ground. I told you not to waste your energy. You are no match for me right now, Li Jingming said as he glanced at Qiao Hongkai. It was the same 20 styles, but Qiao Hongsai's flaming saber was completely defeated by his Sky Frost Fist. It was not only because of his own strength, but also because Qiao Hongkai was in a bad condition. However, for some unknown reason, Li Jingming did not attack Qiao Hongkai himself. He only broke his flaming blade 20. However, just as he broke the flaming blade, Xiaoran, who had been following behind Qiao Hongkai, disappeared without a trace. When she saw his figure again, she had already successfully circled behind him. As expected, this Xiaoran was not a simple character. Li Jingming was secretly vigilant, but he did not continue to attack. He had completed his task by stopping Qiao Hongkai. If he attacked Xiaoran now, not only would Meng Tong not be grateful, instead he would be dissatisfied. Li Jingming, what are you doing? You were so easily bypassed. What a waste. Meng Tong cursed discontentedly from behind. Li Jingming frowned and didn't pay any attention to him. If it weren't for his misgivings about Meng Jueguang, his eldest senior brother manager, he would have long since been unable to restrain himself from attacking Meng Tong. Relying on the fact that he was related to Meng Jueguang, he could order him around. Bossing him around, this guy really thinks he's a big shot. If he was really strong, then so be it. The key was that this guy's strength was so little. Previously, he was easily defeated by Lin Yi in front of everyone. Who knew how he could be so thick-skinned to be the boss of the newcomers in Blue Cloud Pavilion? However, dissatisfaction was dissatisfaction. Li Jingming could only pinch his nose and bear it. Who asked him to rely on Meng Jueguang? It doesn't matter. Since that good-for-nothing Li Jingming couldn't stop you, then I'll have no choice but to do it myself. I'll let you understand your loss. Meng Tong looked at Xiaoran, who was rapidly approaching him, and sneered disdainfully. If it was said that facing Lin Yi, he was a little afraid. But facing Xiaoran, who also came from the secular world, he did not put him in his eyes at all. Moreover, at this moment Xiaoran was exhausted. His strength was not the same as his usual state. 1,000 kicks 20 forms. Meng Tong roared and leaped up. As his legs whistled, they turned into layers of powerful leg shadows, making it hard for people to distinguish them and defend against them. Wherever the leg shadows swept, whether it was grass, trees, sand, or stones, they were instantly crushed into powder. It turned out that the martial art he practiced was also called 1,000 kicks. It was the same as what Zhao Qibing practiced before. It was just that Xiaoran didn't know. Although Meng Tong was defeated by Lin Yi in one move, in reality as a native of Heaven Stage Island, his strength was not weak. If it wasn't for the freak Lin Yi, other masters of the same level would have a headache fighting him. With such power, even if Xiaoran was at his peak, he might not be able to take it head-on. But fortunately, what he needed now was not to defeat Meng Tong, but to escape. Whoosh. Seeing that Meng Tong's heavy leg shadows were about to cover Xiaoran's body suddenly twisted in an extremely strange way. He was obviously dodging to the left, but in the next moment he suddenly appeared on the right side of Meng Tong, directly passing through the leg shadows without any obstruction. Holy shit! How is this possible? Meng Tong was instantly dumbfounded. He was full of confidence that he could defeat Xiaoran in one move. Who would have thought that such a strange scene would appear? Even if he was beaten to death, he would never have thought that such an ordinary country bumpkin like Xiaoran could actually master a movement technique like Shadow Step. At this moment, the other newcomers had arrived one after another. It was such a good opportunity to show off, but in the end Xiaoran slipped away. Meng Tong was really embarrassed this time. With such a brilliant movement technique like Xiao Ran's, as long as he could hold on for a while longer, it would not be a problem for him to rush to the back mountain hall before the others caught up. This time not only Meng Tong but even Li Jingming and the others were all dumbfounded. Stop right there. Otherwise I will cripple Qiao Hongkai and let him become a good-for-nothing Qiao. He will never be able to rise again. Meng Tong pointed at Qiao Hongkai who was surrounded by them, and shouted in exasperation. With that one sentence Xiao Ran, who had successfully escaped, suddenly stopped in his tracks. As for the newcomers, Li Jingming and the others at this moment, looked at Meng Tong with disbelief. Was this guy for real or was he just bluffing? Although the rules of the trial did not state that it was not allowed to cripple others' cultivation, it was obvious that this kind of thing was very vile. Even if the sect did not punish a person who would do such a thing to his own senior and junior brother, others would definitely be afraid and stay away. It might even cause public anger and be despised and reviled by everyone. If he really did that, not only would Meng Tong destroy Qiao Hongkai, he would also destroy himself at the same time. At that time, even Meng Jueguang would not be able to save him. Chapter 3677. Seeing Xiao Ran walk back to the encirclement without putting up a fight, Xiao Hongsai's heart was moved, but she couldn't help but feel sorry for him. Why did you come back? This guy was obviously bluffing. Xiao Ran laughed bitterly. I had no choice but to come back. I've exhausted my true qi, so I can't leave even if I wanted to. Qiao Hongkai shook his head speechlessly, but a warm feeling welled up in his heart. Before this, although he had repeatedly received Lin Yi's kindness and was grateful, he didn't have much of a sense of belonging towards his companion, Xiao Ran. However, in the moment when Xiao Ran resolutely turned back, he finally found a sense of belonging. Whether it was him or Xiao Ran, neither of them were Lin Yi's vassals or burdens. They were themselves, they were Lin Yi's group. Since you're back, why don't you hurry up and hand over the elixirs? Don't tell me you want me to do it myself? Meng Tong snorted coldly with a grin. Now that things had developed to this point, Xiao Ran and Qiao Hongkai had completely lost the possibility of resisting and breaking out of the encirclement. Whether they cooperated or not, the final result would only be that the elixirs would be snatched away by Meng Tong's group. The only difference would be whether the scene would look good or ugly. As soon as Meng Tong said this, Li Jingming and the other newcomers' eyes suddenly burned with passion. Previously, Qiao Hongsai's elixirs had been monopolized by him, so he could basically guarantee first place. This time, Xiao Ran had more than 500 points, so there shouldn't be a need for him to monopolize it, right? And if he took it out and distributed it to the others, who got more and who got less would be the key. Those who got more might be able to rush into the top 3 and obtain the Foundation Establishment Pill, while those who got less could only pray that they would be in the top 10, aiming for the consolation prize of 3 spiritual jades. Among the crowd, the one who was feeling the most anxious was Li Jingming. Previously, Meng Tong had personally promised to give him half of his points. Li Jingming himself already had 500 points. If he added half of Xiao Ran's points, then he would definitely be able to lock into the top 3 and obtain the building foundation pill that he yearned for day and night. A foundation establishment pill, to newcomers like them, was a priceless treasure that could only be encountered by luck and not sought for. Dilly-dallying. Looks like you're unwilling to hand it over. I'm giving you face but you don't want it. In that case I will reluctantly help you. Meng Tong grinned hideously. Unscrupulously he pounced towards Xiao Ran. Just now, under the watchful eyes of so many people, he had actually been directly brushed aside by Xiao Ran. This had caused Meng Tong to lose face in front of so many of his lackeys. Now Xiao Ran was so untactful. This was the perfect opportunity for him to get back at her. Being surrounded by so many people. He did not believe that Xiao Ran would have the guts to resist. And if Xiao Ran dared to resist, that would give him an excuse to cripple both Xiao Ran and Qiao Hongkai at the same time. All he had to do was to say that it was an accidental injury in the chaotic battle. Fists and legs had no eyes. In this way, even the others would not be able to say anything. Xiao Ran and Qiao Hongkai looked at each other, their hearts sinking. Just as Meng Tong had predicted, under this kind of situation, they really did not dare to resist. Otherwise, if they were to be surrounded and beaten up by so many people, not to mention crippling their cultivation, even if they were to be beaten to death, the law would not punish the masses. More importantly, they were both exhausted. Both of their true qi had been exhausted. Even if they had the heart, they did not have the strength to do so. Seeing that the two of them did not show any signs of making a move, Meng Tong could not help but curl his lips in disappointment. However, he did not intend to let the two of them go so easily. Even if he could not seize the opportunity to cripple the two of them, he would at least give them a vicious lesson to let them know the consequences of going against him. 1,000 kicks 20 forms. Meng Tong used the same old trick again. Layers of afterimages of his legs went straight for Xiao Ran. He laughed sinisterly and shouted, "Aren't you very capable? If you have the ability, try dodging again." Xiao Ran gritted his teeth. That instant of using the shadow step had exhausted the last bit of his true chi. If he wanted to dodge the 1,000 kicks again, it would be a fool's dream. But if he did not dodge, he would definitely be heavily injured even if he did not die. Meng Tong, this bastard, would definitely not stop. Just as he was feeling hopeless and helpless, a light breeze suddenly brushed past him. A familiar figure quietly stood in front of him and laughed lightly. "Do you still need to dodge such a crappy martial skill?" "What?" When Meng Tong heard that, he was shocked. When he saw the person's face clearly, he was even more shocked. "Lin Yi extended his palms slightly, intending to teach this guy a lesson so that he would remember it. However, he saw that Meng Tong had actually risked internal injuries to forcefully interrupt the 1,000 kicks 20 forms, which had already reached its peak power. Then he hurriedly took a few steps back, directly retreating to the center of Li Jingming and the rest. Everyone froze at the scene, including Lin Yi. What the fuck? Why didn't I realize that this guy was so cowardly in the past? To retreat without a fight under the eyes of so many people? Or more accurately, he was scared off by a casual sentence from Lin Yi. Wasn't this too cowardly? Li Jingming and the other rookies immediately looked at Meng Tong with extremely strange gazes. This kind of cowardly coward actually had the nerve to call himself the boss of the Blue Cloud Pavilion rookies? What are you looking at? This is a battle tactic, do you understand? You clearly have the advantage in numbers, yet you insist on fighting this idiot one-on-one. Do you think there's a hole in my brain? Meng Tong glared at the rookies guiltily as he roared fiercely. According to this guy's style of doing things that like to be in the limelight, if he wasn't afraid of Lin Yi, would he be so astute as to give up the opportunity to redeem himself? Although the rookies had their suspicions, they did not expose Meng Tong's nature of being fierce in appearance. They only silently added in their hearts, "It seems like the experience of being defeated by Lin Yi in one move on the first day has left quite a psychological scar on this guy." Lin Yi smiled noncommittally and turned to Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai. "Are the two of you all right?" "I'm fine, boss Lin Yi." Xiao Hongkai shook her head excitedly. As for Xiao Ran, other than the unexpected joy in his eyes, there was also a deep sense of worry. "You shouldn't have appeared at this time, really?" Lin Yi naturally knew what he was worried about. He smiled faintly and said, "It's fine. You have already done very well. Leave the rest to me." "All right." Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai nodded at the same time. At this point, other than believing in Lin Yi, they had no other choice. Facing the 12 Heaven Perfection experts led by Meng Tong, although they did not know where Lin Yi got his confidence from at this moment, they began to unconsciously believe that Lin Yi might really have a way to solve this crisis. Chapter 3678. He had 12 Heaven Stage Great Perfection experts, but the opponent only had Lin Yi. Meng Tong had enough capital for him to be arrogant. Even if Lin Yi could he fight 12 experts of the same level? Bullshit. Lin Yi glanced at him and said with a smile that was not a smile, "Didn't you see it today? But it's hard to say who is the idiot." Stubborn, there will be a time for you to cry later." Meng Tong sneered, then turned to the rookies and said, "How to deal with this idiot who sent himself to our doorstep? I don't think I need to talk nonsense with you. As long as we snatch the herbs on him, not to mention the top 3, even the top 10 will be ours. In other words, whoever performs well, I will ensure that he enters the top 3, and the Foundation Establishment pill will be at our fingertips." The moment he said that, the eyes of the rookies lit up. If Lin Yi did not send himself to their doorstep, then other than Meng Tong, who was definitely the first in the trial, Lin Yi would have snatched one of the top 3 spots. After all, this guy's strength was not to be underestimated, and as there was no interference, he had enough time to collect the spiritual herbs to obtain points. Besides that, among the rookies there was a strong competitor, Li Jingming. Even if the other rookies wanted to fight for the top 3 Foundation Establishment pill reward, it would be very difficult. But now that the idiot Lin Yi had sent himself to their doorstep, the situation was very different. With this promise from Meng Tong, when they joined forces to deal with him, as long as they put in a little more effort, there was hope of entering the top 3. Looking at the group of eager rookies, Lin Yi looked at Meng Tong with some surprise. It seemed that this guy was not too stupid. Just now, when he sensed the danger, he immediately chose to admit defeat. Now, with a few words, he stirred up the fighting spirit of the rookies. He had quite the skill. Fists and feet have no eyes. If we were to besiege this pretentious newbie and accidentally kill him, I don't think the elders of the Back Mountain Hall would blame us, Meng Tong said in a meaningful tone. In this way, the newcomers who originally had some misgivings immediately unlocked their last shackles. In order to fight for the top 3 Foundation establishment pills as rewards, they were now besieged by 12 against 1. You would definitely go all out. Meng Tong immediately smiled in satisfaction. Not to mention Lin Yi, even the most powerful Heaven Stage Great Perfection expert in history would not be able to survive the siege of 12 Heaven Stage Great Perfection experts. Most importantly, because of the 2 burdens, Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai, and because of that ridiculous morality, Lin Yi couldn't even run. Today was the day of Lin Yi's death. Lin Yi scanned the crowd slowly and saw that they were getting closer and closer. His face, however, wasn't as fearful as they'd imagined. Instead, he had a mocking smile on his face. I say, do you guys know who your opponent is yet? Isn't he just a country bumpkin from the secular world? He's already at death's door. What big words does the pretentious newbie want to say to disturb the hearts of the people? Meng Tong laughed wildly. The other newcomers were also indifferent. At this moment, in their eyes, Lin Yi was not a threat at all. Instead, he was a big pile of points. Looks like you've all been blinded by your own eyes. What a group of sad fellows. Lin Yi sneered, and then his expression turned serious. A powerful aura surged out from his body without reservation. In an instant, everyone's expression changed. The way they looked at Lin Yi was filled with disbelief and shock. This kind of powerful aura that was close to materialization was not something a Heaven Stage expert could possess. Even a Heaven Stage full circle expert was far from enough. It could only be an existence of a higher level, a Foundation Establishment expert. Damn. When did this guy become a Foundation Establishment initial stage expert? Meng Tong's heart trembled violently. After spending every day with Meng Jueguang, he was very clear on what kind of level this kind of aura signified. If one's strength had not reached this level, it would be impossible to even put on an act. Not only him, but the other newcomers such as Li Jingming also unconsciously took a few steps back in shock. They looked at each other in disbelief. The 12 of them besieging a Heaven Stage full circle expert was a sure thing. But if they were facing a Foundation Establishment initial stage expert, especially a strong person like Lin Yi, then the situation would be completely different. Although the Foundation Establishment initial stage and Heaven Stage full circle seemed to be only separated by a thin line, they were 2 completely different realms. One was in the sky and the other was on the ground. In the eyes of the cultivation world, a Foundation Establishment initial stage expert was already considered to be a beginner. Although a Heaven Stage full circle expert sounded awesome, he was still a reserve cultivator. Most of the official sects on the Heaven Stage Island had a minimum requirement of accepting disciples at the Foundation Establishment initial stage and above. As for the so-called Heaven Stage full circle expert, they didn't even bother to look at him. If it was said that it was possible to challenge those below the Heaven Stage, then there was no such possibility between the Heaven Stage full circle and the Foundation Establishment initial stage. Simply put, even the weakest Foundation Establishment initial stage expert could definitely crush the strongest Heaven Stage full circle expert in history. There was a complete qualitative difference between the two. Even if they had the advantage in numbers, a total of 12 Heaven Stage full circle experts, they didn't dare to say that they had any chance of winning against a Foundation Establishment initial stage expert. Even if everyone present went crazy and fought to the death with Lin Yi, their chance of winning was definitely less than 10%. And even if they won in the end, it would at most be a Pyrrhic victory. It was estimated that at least 10 of the 12 people would have to die here. In fact, this group of people was only tied together with Meng Jueguang and Meng Tong because of benefits. When there were benefits, they might be able to work together, but in this kind of situation where they were obviously going to die, it was impossible for them to work for Meng Tong for nothing. Therefore, even a mere 10% chance of winning in theory was impossible for this group of people. It wasn't just the newbies, but even Meng Tong himself was completely stunned by Lin Yi. There was only one thought left in his mind: how did this idiot who couldn't even tell a good jade from a bad one become an early-phase Foundation practitioner all of a sudden? Not only was Meng Tong and his group scared out of their wits, Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai, who were standing behind Lin Yi, were also dumbfounded. They looked at each other and didn't know what to say. Chapter 3679. When did their boss break through? He had only been in the Welcome Pavilion for a short period of less than a month, and from beginning to end, he hadn't occupied any cultivation resources. This cultivation speed was a little too terrifying. Boss Lin Yi was indeed Boss Lin Yi. No wonder he had the confidence to deal with so many people. Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai looked at each other, their eyes filled with admiration. Lin Yi winked at the two of them, then turned to the group of newcomers opposite him and said lightly, "Didn't you want to bully the few with numbers? I believe you won't mind me bullying the weak, right? Don't waste time, hurry up and start. We still have to report back to the rear hall after the fight." Accompanied by his powerful aura, every word and sound hammered heavily on the ears of the rookies. They were already scared out of their wits, and at that moment, they were even more terrified. They lowered their heads, not daring to look Lin Yi in the eye, afraid that they would be the first sacrifice. Even when they faced Meng Jueguang, who was an even more powerful early-stage Foundation establishment expert, they had never felt so frightened. But now, facing Lin Yi, they deeply understood what it meant to tremble with fear. After all, no matter how strong Meng Jueguang was, he wouldn't be able to do anything to them, but Lin Yi was their true enemy, especially in a trial like this where they were allowed to attack each other. Even if Lin Yi crippled all of them in a fit of rage, he wouldn't be punished. More importantly, before that sentence they were still planning to attack Lin Yi. They did not expect that in the blink of an eye, the strong and the weak would switch positions, and they became lambs waiting to be slaughtered. How could they not be afraid at this time? Seeing that everyone began to collectively retreat, Lin Yi shook his head speechlessly. Blue Cloud Pavilion had been weak for a long time, and now even this group of newcomers were so useless. Just now they were all so proactive when they were bullying him with numbers, but now they immediately shrank back when they saw that the situation wasn't good. Grand Perfection Heaven stage experts being so wretched, it was really embarrassing. Come on. Lin Yi didn't want to waste any more time and took a step forward. However, what he did not expect was that this seemingly harmless action had startled Uncle Meng Tong, who was the most nervous of them all. Without saying a word, he let out a howl. He actually scrambled and ran away. What the fuck, does this guy have no shame? Everyone present, including Lin Yi, was dumbfounded. He hadn't even done anything, yet he was already running away in terror. This guy had even claimed to be the boss of the newcomers in Blue Cloud Pavilion. Wasn't he a little too much? But no matter. Meng Tong, the so-called leader, did run away, and he ran away without hesitation. He was quite fast. Immediately after, Li Jingming also quietly escaped. He was a discerning person and could already see that Lin Yi was worried about Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai, the two burdens who had no combat power. He didn't seem to have any intention of chasing after them. Moreover, Meng Tong had already taken the lead. If he didn't escape now, when would he? If there was one, there would be two, and there would be three. Seeing Meng Tong and Li Jingming run away one after another, the other newcomers also began to scheme in their hearts. One by one they wanted to escape. However, Lin Yi wouldn't let them get what they wanted so easily. Did I say that you can leave? The next one who wants to escape. Don't blame me for not giving face to our fellow disciples. With one sentence, the originally restless newcomers suddenly turned pale. Although each of them still wanted to escape, they didn't dare to be the first to stand out. Although if they all scattered and escaped, even an expert in the early stage of Foundation establishment like Lin Yi would have a hard time stopping them. According to what he said, whoever dared to be the first to escape, he would definitely keep his eyes on the first person to kill. That was something he could definitely do. For a moment, the remaining newcomers didn't dare to move. Only then did Lin Yi nod his head. Because he didn't expect Meng Tong to be so shameless, he actually made a mistake just now. Otherwise, if he had spoken earlier to intimidate them, he wouldn't have let Meng Tong and Li Jingming run away for nothing. After all, just as Li Jingming had speculated, there were still Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai standing behind him. Although if he really chased after Meng Tong, then no matter how fast Meng Tong's movement technique was, he could only wait to be captured, but if he did that, he wouldn't have the time to care about the other newcomers. If someone were to have crooked thoughts and take advantage of the time when he was chasing after Meng Tong to steal Xiao Ran's spiritual medicine, or simply cripple both Xiao Ran and Li Jingming. Even an expert in the early stage of foundation establishment like Lin Yi wouldn't be able to split himself. However, now that Meng Tong and Li Jingming had escaped, the remaining newcomers didn't dare to move anymore. This result was still considered good. Lin Yi swept his gaze across the remaining newcomers. Everyone who was swept by his gaze was trembling with fear and trepidation, just like criminals who had been caught in the act and were waiting to be sentenced. Their fate was now completely in the hands of Lin Yi. Although it was impossible for Lin Yi to do something as infuriating as crippling everyone present, it was entirely possible for him to beat everyone up for Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai as punishment. Putting themselves in their shoes, if they were in Lin Yi's position, they would probably make the same choice. Otherwise, it would be difficult to dispel the hatred in their hearts. However, what Lin Yi said next made everyone heave a sigh of relief. I won't make things difficult for you. As long as each of you takes out spiritual medicine that is equivalent to 100 points, I can let you go. Of course, if you don't cooperate, I can only choose a more violent method. How you choose, it's up to you. Originally, they thought that all the elixirs on them would be confiscated, and that would be the minimum punishment. They would be lucky if they didn't have to suffer any physical pain. Who would have thought that Lin Yi would be so merciful to them? Although these people didn't have much time to collect spiritual medicine, they still had 300 to 400 points. The highest number even had more than 500 points. If everyone only contributed 100 points, there wouldn't be any substantial loss. The reason was very simple. Now that things had developed to this stage, Lin Yi's group definitely had the upper hand. Even if there were two uncertain factors, Meng Tong and Li Jingming, to everyone present, there was no need to think about the top 3. The best result was to fight for the top 10. That way they would at least be able to obtain 3 spiritual jades as consolation. And Lin Yi's setting of a limit of 100 points happened to scratch the itch of everyone. This was because in the trial rules, there was a supplementary rule that didn't attract much attention. Chapter 3680. After all, for the 3 pavilions, the newcomer trial was held to a large extent for the newcomers to collect elixirs. But if the final number of elixirs collected was only a little, or even not enough to take out, then the rewards would be too high to make ends meet. That would be a joke. And because the average score of each trial could reach around 500 points, the threshold of 200 points was basically ignored. But because of the special circumstances of this trial, it came in handy. If Lin Yi asked for more, then the final result would be that even if these newcomers were to rank in the top 10, they would not have enough points to reach the 200 points, and thus miss out on the rewards. And the 100 points that Lin Yi asked for just happened to take into account this point. Even if everyone present contributed 100 points, they would still have at least 200 points left, and the final reward would not be lacking. For them, this way there wouldn't be too obvious a loss. After all, in the fight for the top 10 they were competitors with each other. It didn't matter how many points Lin Yi and the others had. As long as they could ensure that they were above the basic points and that they could still compete fairly with each other, then Lin Yi could get as many points as he wanted. There was no need to take the risk of falling out with Lin Yi. After all, this group of people weren't really soft persimmons. No matter what, they were still experts at the great perfection of heaven's stage. Although the situation was now completely under Lin Yi's control, once it involved key interests, if he bullied them too much and someone with ulterior motives fanned the flames, it was likely to cause a strong backlash. And although Lin Yi was powerful, he was only one person in the end. Once this group of people became chaotic, it would be very difficult to perfectly control the situation like now. Lin Yi had already calculated in his heart. By collecting 100 points from everyone as a punishment, he could ensure his own interests, and he would not completely become enemies with all the rookies. After all, these people were only temporarily relying on Meng Jueguang for benefits. Their loyalty was not high. If he bullied them too much this time, Meng Jueguang would be the fisherman who reaped the benefits, and these people would become his sworn enemy. Lin Yi would not do such a stupid thing. Soon, these rookies nimbly handed over 100 points worth of elixirs before looking nervously at Lin Yi. He was afraid that Lin Yi would go back on his word. Some people had even thought about it. Once Lin Yi went back on his word, they would immediately escape like Meng Tong and Li Jingming. There would always be a chance in the chaos. And if Lin Yi was in a dilemma, it would be even better. They could even find a chance to snatch it back. But Lin Yi wasn't as greedy as these people thought he was. He ordered some of the herbs. After counting a few elixirs, he waved his hand to let these people leave. Everyone felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders, and they hurriedly left. Because Lin Yi had let them go, their gazes towards Lin Yi weren't as hostile as they had imagined. At least they did not feel too much hatred. Instead, Meng Tong, who was the first to escape, became the target of contempt in their hearts. These elixirs, the two of you will each take half. Lin Yi turned his head to look at Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai. The two of them were stunned. Half each. That way Xiao Ran would be able to reach 1,000 points. Even Xiao Hongkai, who had nothing, would not be able to win. He could also get 500 points. I've calculated it. This way at least two of us can enter the top 3. In other words, getting 2 building foundation dawn is not a problem. 1 for each of you is enough. Lin Yi said with a smile. He himself was an expert in the early stage of the foundation establishment realm, so he naturally had no use for foundation establishment pills. Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai were stunned for a while. Looking at the shocking 1,800 points behind Lin Yi, they finally digested the meaning of Lin Yi's words. They did not know what to say and could only nod blankly. The final points of the 3 were, Lin Yi was 1,800, Xiao Ran was 1,000, and Xiao Hongkai was 500. Under the premise that the other newcomers had already lost 100 points, even if Meng Tong and Li Jingming were 2 unknown factors, according to normal circumstances, this kind of result should be enough to lock them into the top 3. As for Xiao Hongkai, although she could not make it into the top 3, she would definitely be in the top 5 and would not be any worse than this. Following Lin Yi's instructions, Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai could not help but ask as they divided the spiritual herbs, Boss Lin Yi, when did you break through to the early stage of the foundation establishment realm? Why didn't we notice any signs at all? I had already broken through when I was still in the secular world. It would be strange if you could notice any signs at all. It happened not too long ago. Lin Yi could only answer vaguely. Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai looked at each other, their eyes filled with even more admiration. They turned and pointed at the shocking points on Lin Yi's basket and asked curiously, then what's with the 1,800 points? Boss Lin Yi, you couldn't have encountered some kind of peerless spiritual herb that is worth 1,000 points, right? This was a very normal speculation. According to the average standard of 500 points, to be able to reach 800 points was already very rare. As for 1,800 points, unless it was a pie falling from the sky and 1,000 points falling from the sky, they really could not think of a more reasonable speculation. You already know that I'm a pill master, so it's not strange for me to have some tricks up my sleeve when it comes to gathering spiritual herbs, right? Lin Yi laughed noncommittally. Even if the 2 of them were his little brothers, the secret of the Skybolt pig was related to the space in the jade pendant, so he could not easily say it out loud. Ah, that's true. Xiao Ran had long heard of Lin Yi's achievements when he was still in the secular world, and Xiao Hongkai had also heard of him from her bitter senior brother, so they both knew that he was a pill master. As an pill master, it was normal for him to have his own unique methods and experience in gathering spiritual herbs. In comparison, they were all amateurs, so they could only feel that it was amazing. Seeing that it was almost time, Lin Yi and the other 2 did not delay any longer, and directly returned to the back mountain hall according to the map. At this moment, the other newcomers had already returned a step earlier. Other than Lin Yi and the other 2, only Meng Tong and Li Jingming had not arrived. After a while, when it was noon, Meng Tong and Li Jingming finally arrived. Chapter 3681. For a moment, the gazes of everyone present at Meng Tong began to become strange. He was obviously so terrified just now, so where did this guy get his confidence from? However, when Meng Tong flaunted his basket in front of everyone suddenly sucked in a breath of cold air. A full 1,600 points. Fuck. Everyone could not stay calm. Even if the 500 points that were snatched from Xiao Hongkai were all in this guy's pocket, it also meant that Meng Tong's points alone had reached 1,100 points. That was too much. One had to know that Meng Tong was the same as them. He only needed 1.5 days to collect the elixirs. To be able to obtain 1,100 points in just 1.5 days, what kind of concept was that? Could it be that this guy was really hiding his strength? Was it just that he didn't look presentable? Not only the crowd, but even Lin Yi was slightly stunned when he saw the points. However, he quickly regained his composure and his lips curled into a faint smile. As for Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai, they looked at Meng Tong's smug face and could not help but laugh. Up until now, because they were afraid of Lin Yi, no one had the time to carefully observe Lin Yi's points. As for Meng Tong, who turned and ran away the moment he appeared, he did not even know what Lin Yi's basket looked like. He thought that the idiot Lin Yi would at most be able to obtain 500 to 600 points. Originally, he was worried that Lin Yi would snatch the points of the other newcomers and surpass him. However, when he heard that Lin Yi was only taking 100 points from each person, he immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Only 100 points per person. In other words, you can only get 1,000 points at most. According to your pretentious behavior, you will probably have to give some points to those two good-for-nothings. In addition to your original points, you can only get 1,000 points at most. Hehe, acting tough newbie. This time you've really failed to act tough and turned into an idiot. Meng Tong chattered on smugly. As for the other rookies, they looked at Lin Yi with ridicule in their eyes. Although Lin Yi did not do anything ruthless to them, he still made them pay 100 points. They were very happy to see Lin Yi suffer. Really? Let's wait and see. Lin Yi smiled faintly. After giving Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai a look, the two of them deliberately covered his basket even more tightly. Since Meng Tong was so smug, then let him be smug for a while longer. Surprises should always be left to the end. A dead duck is still stubborn. Seeing that Lin Yi did not refute, Meng Tong was even more smug. He was able to obtain so many points this time. Other than snatching them from Xiao Hongkai, the most important thing was that Meng Jueguang had given him a cheating device, a wood attribute sensor. This wood attribute sensor could automatically sense all the spiritual herbs within 100 meters, and point out the direction. It was simply a godly tool for harvesting spiritual herbs. In contrast, people like Lin Yi who relied completely on observation to harvest spiritual herbs. That was simply the behavior of a weakling. Could not be compared at all. What Meng Tong did not know was that in this world, there was a spiritual beast called the Sky Thunder Pig. And its ability was at least 10 times that of a wood attribute sensor. As they spoke, it was already noon. Just like before the trial began, the rookies were still waiting quietly in the square of the back mountain. The three elders that he had seen before were still sitting on the three spacious outdoor chairs. They looked as dignified and magnificent as ever, giving off the feeling that they had not moved at all in the past 3 days. Apart from the welcoming pavilion's pavilion master Hu Yunfeng and a few senior stewards, what made Lin Yi surprised was that there were actually 2 more people. And these 2 people were not unfamiliar to him. These 2 people, one was Su Lingchong, the other was a young lady that he had met once before, Shanghai Laner. Seeing that Lin Yi had appeared among the rookies, the little curly bear that was hanging on Shanghai Laner's body immediately whimpered in excitement. If not for Shanghai Laner holding it back, it would probably have struggled to run to Lin Yi's side. Hey you heartless Xiaobai, what kind of soup did that guy feed you? You've never been so attentive to me since I was a child. Shengguan Lan, complained angrily with a pout. The back mountain hall was one of the most remote places in the 3 pavilions. If there was no special reason, she would not be willing to come all the way here. The reason why she came this time was purely because of the little curly bear's coquettish behavior. Just because she had heard Su Lingchong casually mention the Welcome Pavilion's newcomers trial when she was chatting with the other young masters and young ladies, the little curly bear seemed to have been possessed and insisted on pestering her to join in on the fun no matter what. In the end, Shanghai Laner had no choice but to comply with its wishes. Otherwise, this little guy would really turn the house upside down. Originally, Shanghai Laner was a little puzzled by this matter. She thought that the little curly bear just wanted to sneak to the back mountain to play. But now that she saw its behavior, her heart was like a mirror. The little guy came all the way here just to see Lin Yi. For more than 10 years, the little guy was even more attentive to Lin Yi, who had only played with it for a few hours. How could this be tolerated? For a moment, Shanghai Laner's gaze towards Lin Yi was filled with sour resentment. After noticing this, Lin Yi inexplicably shrugged his shoulders. Up until now, he still didn't know the background of this young girl, but from the respectful and reverent expression Su Lingchong and the others showed towards her, this young girl's background should be very deep. Seeing that everyone had arrived, Hu Yunfeng asked the 3 elders for instructions. Then he cleared his throat and announced, "Everyone please be quiet. We will now begin the registration of the newcomer trial points and determine the final ranking." As soon as he finished speaking, the 6 senior stewards of the welcoming pavilion entered their respective rookie camps and began to announce the points one by one. As for the 3 high and mighty elders, they naturally did not need to intervene in such trivial matters. They only needed to ensure that it was fair and that no one would secretly mess with the reputation of the back mountain hall. This process was not carried out by the three pavilions at the same time, but there was an order. Rushing Sky Pavilion was first, followed by Mysterious Pavilion, and as for Blue Cloud Pavilion, it was naturally ranked last. Chapter 3682. Kong Ming Ming's strength wasn't that great, but Lin Yi wasn't surprised that he was able to obtain such a high ranking in a competition like this. After all, Kong Ming Ming was an elixir refiner, and he was more sensitive to wood elemental herbs than others. Moreover, with Su Lingchong's help, it would be hard for him not to obtain first place. Of course, this had nothing to do with Lin Yi, but Lin Yi was rather gratified that Zhong Pingliang was able to enter the top 3. After Soaring Pavilion and Mysterious Pavilion were done, it was finally Blue Cloud Pavilion's turn. However, after 4 or 5 people reported their scores, all of them hovered around 200 to 300 points, completely incomparable to the scores of the newcomers from the other 2 pavilions. The 3 elders' faces, which were originally quite satisfied, immediately darkened. The newcomers from Soaring Pavilion and Mysterious Pavilion laughed without restraint, and the bald elder sitting in the middle frowned. Have all the newcomers from Blue Cloud Pavilion fallen to such a state? Rotten wood really can't be carved. It seems like I should make a suggestion to the Elder Council that Blue Cloud Pavilion doesn't need to recruit newcomers in the future. It's purely a waste of resources. The 2 elders beside him nodded in agreement. No matter what, 4 or 5 people only had 200 to 300 points in a row. This kind of result was really terrible, and according to this trend, it was almost certain that they would break the average score record. However, other people were aiming for the upper limit while this group of useless newcomers from Blue Cloud Pavilion were aiming for the lower limit. Although the scores of the people after that were slightly better, they only hovered around 300 to 400 points, still incomparable to the results of the newcomers from Soaring Pavilion and Mysterious Pavilion. It wasn't until Meng Jueguang reported Meng Tong's score that the entire audience was shocked. Meng Tong. 1,600 points. 1,600 points. What kind of concept was this? One had to know that even the highest score of the newcomers from the previous 2 pavilions was only a little over 1,200 points. This score was a whole lot higher than the previous one. The rookies from the other 2 pavilions were immediately in an uproar. Even the 3 elders sitting there were slightly taken aback. Moments later, the bald elder nodded and said, "This rookie is not bad. He is very competitive. He must have snatched quite a number of points from the other rookies. It can be considered as a fig leaf for Blue Cloud Pavilion." Hearing the bald elder's praise, Meng Tong couldn't help but raise his chin proudly at Lin Yi, who was at the end of the line. His provocation was obvious. Lin Yi pursed his lips with a faint smile. Non-committal. And after Meng Tong's stunning performance, the other rookies once again recovered to the standard of 300 to 400 points. While they were mocked, it only served to accentuate how rare Meng Tong was. Just as the bald-headed elder had said, this newcomer was very competitive. Among the group of trash newcomers from Blue Cloud Pavilion, he was like a crane in a flock of chickens. Xiao Ran. 1,023 points. After seeing Xiao Ran's points, the bitter senior brother was clearly overjoyed. This result was much better than what he expected, where they would all be wiped out. As for Meng Jueguang, he was somewhat stunned. After he reacted, he immediately stared at Meng Tong in dissatisfaction. It had to be known that he had done all this to silence Lin Yi and company in the trial. He had spent a lot of effort. Not only did he prepare a wood elemental sensor for Meng Tong to ensure first place, he had also specially mobilized the rookies, so that they would listen to Meng Tong's instructions in the trial. Logically speaking, with Meng Tong leading so many people to deal with Lin Yi and company, there shouldn't be any major problems. It should have been a simple matter to silence Lin Yi and company perfectly. But now, the most critical Lin Yi had not even had his turn. On Xiao Ran's side, he had already burst out with more than 1,000 points. He had booked a spot in the top 3 in advance. You can't even do such a simple thing. What a piece of trash. Meng Jueguang turned his head and cursed softly. Ninth cousin, you really can't blame me for this. There's really a reason for this. I'll explain it to you in detail later. Meng Tong scratched his head awkwardly as he tried to explain. There's a reason for this? I want to hear what kind of excuse you are using, kid. Meng Jueguang did not believe that with such a huge difference in strength, there was any reason that could explain his failure. However, it was not convenient to speak in this situation. He could only let Meng Tong off for the time being. After this, he would settle the score with this fellow who could not do anything but spoil things. Qiao Hongkai, 500 points. Meng Jueguang's face turned even uglier. Although 500 points was not considered high with so many new disciples in the Clear Cloud Pavilion, the average score was around 300 to 400 points, it was considered a rare high score. He no longer held any hope of silencing Lin Yi and company. The only thing he was thankful for was that he had prepared a wood-type sensor for Meng Tong. At least he would not lose first place. After all, a high score of 1,600 points was impossible for ordinary rookies to achieve unless they plunder from other rookies or simply cheat. However, when it was finally Lin Yi's turn, Meng Jueguang was dumbfounded when he saw the numbers displayed on the basket. He could not react for a long time. "Oh, Jueguang, what are you doing there? Hurry up and report it." Hu Yunfeng glared at Meng Jueguang in dissatisfaction. Lin Yi was the last one. Everyone, including the three elders, was waiting. "Oh, okay." Meng Jueguang snapped out of his daze and rubbed his eyes in disbelief. When he realized that it was still the same number, he reported in disbelief, "Lin Yi, 1,800 points. 1,800 points." The audience instantly went crazy. Meng Tong's 1,600 points had already shocked them. They never expected that there would be an even more impressive result. Holy shit! How is that possible? Meng Tong, who was confident in his victory, was immediately dumbfounded. He was already prepared to celebrate first place. Lin Yi, that idiot, had clearly given a total of 1,000 points to Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai. How could he still have 1,800 points? Ninth cousin must have seen wrongly. It should have been 800 points. However, when he rushed over to take a look, it clearly showed that it was 1,800 points. This must be because the basket is spoiled, right? Meng Tong stammered as he said to the similarly incredulous Meng Jueguang. The 1,000 points that Lin Yi had snatched had all been given to Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai. That was to say, the remaining points were all gathered by him personally. After all, Lin Yi was not like Meng Tong, who had a cheating device like the wood elemental sensor. How could he gather a terrifying number like 1,800 points by himself? There was only one possible explanation. It had to be that the basket was spoiled. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.